part and parcel of the president's negotiating strategy, maybe art of the deal. Throw people off kilter, look at the political optics that we're seeing, American flags. In Washington, D.C., Washington Times, very conservative newspaper, comes out and says 97% of conservative Republicans support the wall. Where is he going after this? To conservative Republicans to raise money. So this is part of the political optics. This is part of the international optics. This is part of, shall I say, The Apprentice? The Apprentice in international relations is applying business practices towards international relations.
And would you say the timing is not surprising? Because we know that the border and a wall was a huge focal point of his campaign when he was running, right? It was the focal point.
Yeah.
Now we've got another election cycle coming around. There are, umpteen Democrats who've already thrown their hats in the ring. This allows him to sort of make this a focal point again.
Well, he's never really let off the gas pedal. And I think with the election, this is all about election optics at this point. He needs to support his base that voted for him the last time. And even if he hasn't created the funding that Congress hasn't funded for the wall, he can say, I'm doing everything I can to keep my promise. Promise is kept. That happens to be the basis of the future of the president's political future. So I think he has tried very hard to please his base, and everything we're doing today, showing him at the border, the American flags, with the Border Patrol, with the military, El Centro, jets in the background, that's playing right into the game plan.
We want to get more of your insights. Our Laura Acevedo is standing by, and
Sure.
she has been near where protesters have been today. Laura, what is the situation where you are now? And could you place us a little bit? Where are you in relation to where the landing just took place?
Yeah, Jim, so we are exactly 22 miles away from where Kimberly and Brian are. Here, much of the protesters have moved on, but if you take a look, that baby Trump balloon is still flying, and the people that brought it here told me they brought it in hopes that the president will see it. He has seen it before, and he has said it has made him feel unwelcome. The protesters tell me that is what they want. They want the president to know that they think that he acts like a baby. However, here on scene, we have also seen some Trump supporters again. They have brought their American flags. They have brought their flags that say, Trump, make America great again. Much of the crowd has moved on to the other side of the mall, but there are people here. They have been stopping, asking us, do you know where on the border the president is going to tour the fence? And I want to show you just how close we are to that fence. We are in the Outlet Mall parking lot, and just behind me, this is the border fence. It is covered with barbed wire all the way at the top, and also has barbed wire along the bottom, 2 rows of barbed wire along the bottom. We have seen Border Patrol presence. We have seen them gathering at the corner, which would be over to the port of entry, which is less than a quarter mile away from us. It is unclear if he's going to come on the east side of the mall or on the west side. There was Border Patrol in place on both locations. So many people are wondering, where exactly is that motorcade going? We are standing by here, hoping that he comes in this direction. If not, we will take you to the other side and show you that as well.
All right, please stand by, because we will want to take that when it happens. It should be soon. Very quickly, again, the president heading to the Border Patrol station there in Calexico, where they're going to be having a discussion, talking to agents there about the immigration and the border. And Ron B., who's been nice enough to give us some insights here, I want to ask you, so one of the big issues has been migrants coming in from Central America, and the president saying that Mexico needs to handle their southern border better to keep that flow from then coming into the U.S. He recently cut aid to Honduras, Guatemala.
$450 million.
That's right, and El Salvador. Does that make sense? That critics are saying that money is helping them improve their infrastructure and economy so that people won't want to leave. Does it make sense to cut that money?
Well, many experts don't think it does, simply because if you make it worse for them, that means more are going to want to come north. But the real issue is the problems in Central America, that folks feel afraid for their life, their livelihoods, that they need to come north. The president at Andrews Air Force Base this morning mentioned that Mexico has been apprehending more and more the people at their southern border. That's why he backed off on the threat of closing the border but still holding a year in advance the possibility of tariffs. So the problem emanates from Central America, is problematic because it comes across the Mexican border and then reaches our border, and we have to take care of people that come to our border and ask for political asylum. We do not shoot people at the border. Trust me, we do not. It is a misdemeanor to cross the border. It is not a felony. And so our Border Patrol people have very strict rules of engagement here. I don't know what the rules of engagement for Mexico are down at the southern border, but over the last few days, evidently they have arrested 4,000 to 5,000 people. That was enough to get the president's applause this morning at Andrews Air Force Base.
I'd like to ask you a bit about the limits of U.S. influence. I'm going to hold the question, though, because we do have another reporter standing by, Matt Boone, who's at an immigration shelter in downtown San Diego. And Matt, what are you seeing there?
Hey guys, yeah, this is where they hold people who have legally made it across through the asylum seeking process. They pass their credible fear interview, and then they're passed on to some local shelters and organizations. Here, right now, this shelter is being housed at the former family courthouse in downtown San Diego. It's been moved around many different times over the past few months because of funding, logistics, and privacy. But now the county publicly announced that it will be here. We actually got a tour of this a couple weeks ago when it opened. It offers lodging, food, medical care, legal aid to asylum seekers. The vast majority of them, though, only spend about 24 to 72 hours in the shelter before they move on to connect with family or other contacts. The shelter is run by a group of different organizations called the Rapid Response Network. We've got some information about them. The network was first organized back in 2017, but really stepped up back in October of 2018. The coalition is made up of about 40 human rights and services organizations, attorneys, and community leaders. It's funded through a mix of private donations and financial assistance the county receives from the state. Since November and the end of the Safe Release program, which I'll get to more on in just a minute, the network has served more than 11,000 asylum seekers waiting to have their cases heard in court. And going back to that Safe Release program, because of that change in the policy back in October by the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security, previously they had been helping those migrants who make it across get in touch with their point of contact, someone in the United States that they can go to and get lodging. They stopped doing that back in October, and because of that, the County of San Diego actually filed a lawsuit this week seeking for financial recuperance of about $1.3 million that has been spent on funding this shelter and other related expenses. They're also saying that this is in the purview of the federal government, not local and state governments, to care for immigrants who have made it across the border illegally. So that is something that we're going to be looking into as that lawsuit develops. For now, reporting live downtown, Matt Boone, 10 News. Back to you guys.
All right, Matt, appreciate it. Very quickly want to show you the room where the president is headed. He's going to be speaking with Border Patrol agents, law enforcement here, and they will be talking about immigration, the border issues, what agents face on a daily basis, how the resources are working for them, how policy is working for them. And of course, we're going to stay on top of that and try to bring you some of that. And I just want to ask Ron, so Matt talking about the Rapid Response Network, talking about migrants who end up in our community in San Diego. These are the real repercussions of policy and how San Diegans will be dealing with this every day. How do you sort of navigate all that?
Well, the difficulty here is we have something called the Statue of Liberty that says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And once they get here in the numbers that they're arriving over the last 3 months, we have to house them somehow. We have to feed them somehow. We have to take care of them somehow. And these are the folks that are more than likely the legitimate asylum seekers. This has nothing to say for the drug dealers, the human traffickers, and the criminals that have come across for their own reasons. Somebody has to pay for it, and this is the issue why we need an immigration law that Congress has failed to act. This is a reason why we need to come to terms with whose responsibility is it to pay for it. Is it the state of California? Is it the federal government, or is it shared? Good question. But all of these questions come when you have a large group of migrants come into a country that has a lot more rights than they had where they came from.
Which brings us back to the question I wanted to ask you, the limits of the United States, which has tried time and again to create little United States, right? Democracies that will operate in a way that we do in terms of international relations. Have we ever, not to my knowledge, succeeded in doing that without the populace itself deciding this is what they want for themselves?
Well, we've certainly tried, haven't we? But
Yeah.
especially in the Middle East and Afghanistan, we've tried in other places, but the fact of the matter is, if the local government and the local people do not want democracy, we cannot force it upon them. Look at the Arab Spring, where young people were in the streets, and that led to several civil wars. We're still fighting in places where we had hoped democracy would take root. So it's a very difficult thing to help people, but ask them to adopt our version of democracy without the governments to do it.
By allowing a valve for people to escape the bad situation, are we in a sense extending it because we're allowing those that might affect change, instead of affecting change at home, to have a way to get out?
Well, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it, if you're hungry and your family's starving, you gotta go, right? Or if you're afraid for your life, you gotta go. And I think that's where philosophy and the road meet.
We want to very quickly get to Jared Aarons, who's in the 10 News Live Center. One thing you can count on, Jared, is that President Trump will keep on tweeting.
Yes, he will, and he just did. Kimberly Hunt talked about how much he loves spending time and seeing his adoring fans, and you can see from this tweet that he just put out, he was having a good time even on the drive from the Air Force Base over to Calexico. This video from inside the motorcade that the president tweeted out just a few minutes ago, and you can see it's video of all the people on both sides of the car waving American flags, Trump flags, wearing those red hats, and the president obviously enjoying this. He was very quick to tweet that out. In the Live Center, Jared Aarons, 10 News.
All right, Jared, appreciate that. Very quickly again, showing you the room. There are people in there. Actually, how patient are those people? They've just been sitting in there waiting for the president to arrive with all of those empty seats.
This is where the most dynamic space at this point with the lockdown camera and the
But it will be.
empty
But you can see the
Yeah.
line there, right? The little rope line. Again, this is where the president will be having that discussion with agents who work for the Border Patrol, and we will be bringing you that as the president's motorcade heads there.
Right now, I want to get out to Laura Acevedo. She is, as she said, about 20 miles from the place, the air facility where the president landed, and closer to where protesters have been gathered. Laura, what's the situation out there now?
Well, Jim, we've since moved a lot closer to the border fence. I want to show you, it's right next to me. This is the barbed wire at the bottom of the fence. You can see there's 2 layers. And also, I want to show you the fence. It is steel and it is see-through, and we can see the people on the other side in Mexicali. It is a residential area on the other side, but there aren't any protesters on the other side. I want to direct your attention all the way to the top of the fence, where there are also 2 layers of barbed wire to prevent people from climbing on top of this fence. There is Border Patrol presence out here, and they have parked here, we think, because the motorcade is going to come into this area. That is the question that everyone is asking. Where is the president's motorcade going to travel? I want to direct your attention behind me now, which is actually the port of entry here in Calexico. There has been a gathering of people in that corner that we are showing you right now. And so the question is the president going to drive in this way and head over to tour the wall on this side? We also saw Border Patrol presence on the other side of the mall. So many are wondering, is he going to the west side or to the side that we are on now? But you can see the wall is tall. It is overpowering when you first see it, covered in barbed wire both on the bottom and on the top, so no one can come through it or over it. We are going to stay here and await and see. We are actually seeing more federal protective police, actually, so I'm going to direct your attention on that side. They are actually diverting traffic through the mall parking lot. We are unsure if they are getting ready to close the street for that motorcade. Protesters are still here. I want to show you that baby Trump. That is actually a few feet away from where we were earlier. Their police, Homeland Security is moving in now. We are trying to figure out if that is any indication that this is where the president's motorcade is going to be arriving. So again, that is the question. We will be here and we will bring it to you as soon as it arrives, if it comes over to this area. Back to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. That movement looks like perhaps they are getting ready. And so the protesters then, have they sort of split up in order to cover both sides, depending on where the motorcade is?
Well, yeah, Virginia, the protesters marched with a police escort onto the street, and they have since moved on. We are working to figure out if they went to the west side of the mall, but that's why they left the baby Trump in place, because they said they want the president to see it. Protesters tell me they think the president has temper tantrums and that he acts like a baby. So that is why it's the president's face on a baby's body. They want him to see it. The president has said in the past that he thinks the balloon is makes him feel unwelcome. Protesters I spoke to say that is what they want.
Laura, that new section of fence that you're showing us, designed now so that the Border Patrol agents can see through it. I'm just curious, as we look through it where you are right now, what do we see? What's on the other side?
Yeah, Jim, well, we'll turn the camera to it right now so you can see through it. You can actually see someone waving on at us from the other side. But this is a residential area. There are cars driving by. It's almost as if nothing were happening on the U.S. side of the border. We did see a little shop on the other side, but for the most part, it looks to be residential. And just a few feet away is the port of entry. So, yes, if agents were to be patrolling this area, just like we are standing right now, you can see through it. But, of course, the barbed wire is there for protection, and so nobody comes on through. We are seeing an increased presence of Border Patrol and Homeland Security cars. Those Homeland Security cars that we saw drove in, and they're actually driving right back out. We assume that they are getting ready for some type of arrival, but there has been an increased movement. And then we have the Border Patrol agent that is parked right here with a person that is wearing camo. We assume that is maybe someone from the naval base, but yes, a lot of movement happening right now. The protesters are in place, and both the anti-Trump and Trump supporters are really hoping that he comes by this area. The anti-Trump because they want to make him feel unwelcome, and the Trump supporters because they tell me they love their president. They love what he's doing for the Calexico area and what he has done with this fence and putting the barbed wire, making sure that no one gets through. So they're just hoping to see him, whether it's for support or lack of support. They want him to come through this area.
All right, Laura, thank you. We will be checking back with you. Want to head over to Jared Aarons in the 10 News Live Center area right now for a quick check in there. Jared?
Yeah, some very strong and harsh words just coming into our newsroom from the ACLU. This statement about his visit to Calexico, and listen to some of the things that they wrote. They said that his anti-immigrant actions make it clear that the president's only objective is to create fear, chaos, and xenophobia where none exists. They're asking him to stop this extremist pandering to his base, and they want him to meet with people who live in Imperial Valley and near the border. They say that they want him to learn what it's like, and say he is unmoved by the harmful effects his threats to close the border has on businesses, family, and civic life in the region. So some very strong words from the ACLU this morning condemning the president's actions and his visit to the border. Guys, back to you.
All right, Jared, thank you. Ron B., want to bring it back in here. So we saw in Laura's shot the fence. You can see through it. You see Calexico, cars, homes. And we've heard the stories about the number of people who live on that side, but they come over the border on a daily basis to work in the U.S.
To buy things, to get medical attention. There are 679,000 people that live in Mexicali. There are 40,000 people that live in Calexico. So one could even say that Calexico is a suburb of Mexicali. But at the same time, what this means is that this is a focal point for activity, both legal and illegal, that come over the border. One of 47 ports of entries. So most of the people in Mexicali are fine. Most of the people in Calexico are fine. They have a bilateral relationship, relatives on both sides. It's when folks come from Central America to come through, it puts a strain on Mexicali, and it certainly will put a strain on Calexico, which doesn't have the resources to take care of the immigrants and the numbers of immigrants coming from Central America.
And as we said moments ago, if you're talking about changing the way things operate in Central America, it'll have to come ultimately from within the people of Central America.
That's correct. But what do you do once there's a crisis? Do you ignore it? You can't ignore it. You have to figure out ways to help them international aid is just a Band-Aid. That won't happen unless the folks there have a strong economy and have a government that relates to the people and doesn't take bribes. I don't know how else to put it. And until that changes, the culture of government and representation in Central America, we're going to continue to see these crises.
So the section of fence that we're talking about, it's about a little over 2 miles. It took about, I think, 8 months to build, $18 million. But the interesting thing is it was actually authorized back in 2009 during the Obama administration. When we're talking about a barrier, a wall, a fence, whatever you want to call it, how much of this is, it's a wall, right? I mean, we call it whatever you want, it's a barrier. How much of this is semantics? I mean, you know, the president, there's a plaque saying this is the beginning of his border wall. A lot of the structure that is there now was built during the George W. Bush administration. So sort of what do you see in terms of the future of this?
This is all political optics. The president went there because probably the plaque is there that says this is where the wall started. He's there to tweet to his 60 million followers all the American flags he just filmed in the limo on the way to the border. So this is about political optics, in my view, because if you start looking at when this started, you could even go back further. Democrats and Republicans have supported border security. This has become such a big political, dare I say, huge political issue for the president that this is why this trip is happening.
Vice President Mike Pence weighing in on the events of the day from Houston. Let's hear what he has to say.
To all of the courageous men and women of U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, thank you for your service. We are proud of you and we are with you.
So a lot of the sound that we're hearing, I mean, very little protest so far today. Everything's been very well modeled so that the president is surrounded by supporters. He's heading to what's called a roundtable discussion, though that roundtable pretty well sided on one side of the equation here in terms of the opinions about a border wall.
All federal agents and federal agencies that are talking about going to be able to express through the press the problems of the Category 5 hurricane that Secretary Nielsen has said has just hit the border.
Yeah, when the president and the White House set it up, of course they're going to set it up for that for them. They don't want a lot of protesters there. They don't want a lot of argument or debate. I want to get to 10 News reporter Matt Boone, who we spoke to here just a short time ago, but get an update here. He is outside a facility they have set up for migrants who have crossed into the U.S. legally. Of course, Matt, this has been a major issue in terms of how the resources to deal with the numbers of migrants.
Yeah, Virginia, since about last October, they estimate about 60 to 80 people have crossed through the southern border here in the San Diego area each day. Now, these are asylum seekers. They've made it across. They've passed through the process needed to be able to come into the United States legally. A lot of them are wearing ankle bracelets, and they've been coming here now for the past 2 weeks or so to what was the family court building downtown. The county agreed to let a group called the San Diego Rapid Response Network use this space to house those migrants. Many of them, though, are only stopping here for a couple days, if that, so that they can stop, they can rest, they can get medical care, they can get legal aid, and then they can get on to their final destinations. Many of them have family or some point of contact in the United States that they're trying to get to. Now, before October, we've been talking about this safe release policy. That used to be something that ICE and the Department of Homeland Security would do. When people came across legally, they got their asylum claim, they would actually be able to get in touch with some of those people who they know in the United States with the help of ICE, and they would help them get to their final destination. But that policy stopped. It's unclear exactly why, but it stopped abruptly back in October, and that's led to that big flood of people coming here on the streets of San Diego that need to be cared for, and that's what they're doing here at the shelter here behind me, guys.
All right, Matt Boone outside a shelter there downtown. We appreciate it.
And right now we've got County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher joining us on the phone. And Supervisor Fletcher, we've been talking about the optics of this today, and perhaps today more optics than substance. What's your take?
Well, I think that's true with the majority of the Trump presidency. Is it's more optics than substance. And I think if he wants to come to San Diego and tour something, he should go tour that asylum shelter that was just referenced. there he will see these families who have fled violence and gone thousands of miles because they believe in the promise of America and what we stand for. And he'll also see county government, city government, state government, and nonprofits stepping up, quite frankly, to fill a void in the failure of their administration. For decades, the United States government was capable and adequately addressed the challenges of asylum seekers, but through his administration's desire to undo a policy decades that had worked to create a manufactured crisis, we're all having to step up and fill the void. So instead of, doing whatever he's going to do at the wall, I wish he would come see the actual impact of his policy changes firsthand.
Supervisor Fletcher, this week you talked about it quite a lot with the county suing the government over the end of the safe release program. What happens in the meantime when the county has to deal with the number of migrants who are seeking a safe haven?
Well, the federal government's failure and Donald Trump's attempt to grandstand and create a crisis on this issue does not alleviate us of the obligation to do right by the people of San Diego. And so I actually think everyone in San Diego should be proud of their local government. So what happened is, in a bipartisan way, Washington, D.C. could learn a lot about how to get things done based on what we've done here in San Diego. Myself, a Democrat, Supervisor Greg Cox, a Republican, led an effort to get the county involved in providing a building. We went to the state and we got Governor Newsom, along with our legislative leaders, to put money in the budget to help fund the operations of this. And then we worked really closely with our nonprofit partners who are performing a heroic task. And we're ensuring public safety. We're ensuring these folks don't get added to the roles of San Diego homelessness. We're ensuring public health. And we will continue to do that. We'll meet the humanitarian and moral obligation. But the federal government really should do its job. And it had done what we're doing now for decades on end until Trump unilaterally canceled it. And if they don't want to do it, then they should provide the funding for it, because it shouldn't be on the people of California.
Supervisor Fletcher, one of the arguments from the other side has been the more that we open our doors and make the United States look like an inviting place, the more people are going to want to pass through those doors, and your problem only continues to get worse and worse. What is your opinion on that?
Well, the people that say that need to go out and get a hammer and tear down the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty clearly says, send us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. And my guess is most every one of those folks had a family member at some point in the not-too-distant past who came to America, because since our founding, we have been a place that has been open and has been welcoming and has been receptive. And I'm just grateful that when their families came here, they didn't face the same type of attitudes and approaches that said, no, you can't come here, go back. But second to that is we have a rigorous and robust asylum process that assesses the validity of the asylum claim. This is not just anyone who wants to come and wants to get a job or wants to do things. They have to have a legitimate and documented claim of asylum, and that process has never changed. And I'll just add for those folks that, what everyone says, whether you're a more progressive Democrat like myself or the most conservative Republican, they say if people would just follow the law, just follow immigration law, and every one of these individuals has followed the law. They've done exactly what federal immigration law does, and they all have a documented asylum claim. They have papers from the Trump immigration administration saying that they have the right to be in this country. And so, again, I think what we're talking about is inconsistent with the law, and I think it's inconsistent with the values that we hold as Americans.
And just very quickly, Supervisor Fletcher, so let's say in an ideal world, a policy with people who follow the law and enter the United States lawfully and find shelter here and an opportunity for themselves and their families, that all happens. If that happened, would you still have a problem with some sort of wall or physical barrier built along the border?
No, we have a wall, and there's areas where it's appropriate to have. And I think I was just down there on Monday. I was standing next to the wall, and we've had a wall for decades. And so there's areas where it's appropriate and it serves a purpose, and then there's areas where it doesn't make any sense. And so, what Trump is proposing is not an actual solution to a problem. It's a politicking thing so he can get more retweets on his tweets. This isn't a desire to do things that make us safer. If he wanted to do things that make us safer, he would have took the actual instruction and guidance from Border Patrol from 2 years ago, which said it's a waste of money to put walls in other areas where it's remote and it doesn't make sense. If he wanted to actually make our system work, he would fund the immigration judges we need to more swiftly process the asylum claims so that folks are not here lingering for an extended period of time to assess if they have a valid claim to be here or not be here. So much of what's happening today is a desire to create a crisis to inflame his political base so that he can further divide Americans. This is not about what keeps America safe. It's not about what makes America great. And I think that that's the frustration that folks across the board are feeling. And, you know, I'm on a board of supervisors that has 4 Republicans and myself, the lone Democrat, that just voted to sue Trump. And so I don't even think this is an inherently partisan issue. This is just an issue to just say, stop playing games with things that are so vitally important to our region and do your job.
Supervisor Flesher, I want to thank you very much for sharing your insights with us this morning. Appreciate your time. And right now, I think we want to check again on the meeting room where this roundtable discussion is going to take place between the President and members of the Border Patrol to talk about, of course, border issues, what their needs are and what their challenges are right now.
And we expect this to start shortly. Now, according to the official schedule, it was supposed to start, about 12:15. As you can see, if you look at the clock, we're already past that by almost 20 minutes. The President, of course, taking some time at Naval Air Facility El Centro to talk to his supporters who had gathered there before he got into the motorcade. And we're starting to see some movement. So it looks like this is going to be starting momentarily.
Okay, right now let's check in with Jared in the live center. Jared, what do you have for us?
Guys, we're hearing from Customs and Border Protection right now. There's no doubt that we have seen an influx of more people coming to the border seeking either refugee migrant status or just trying to cross. And they're going to announce some new numbers on Monday. They say that this has been getting bigger every month and that March will be no exception. Here's what we know so far. The new numbers are going to come Monday, but these are what the numbers look like for the start of 2019. And we have the graphic that can show you just how many people have been coming across the border over the last few months. In February, Border Patrol reported the most apprehensions in a decade with more than 66,000 people trying to cross into the U.S. That was up 18,000 from January. They say they've also seen a big spike in the number of family units trying to cross from the same time last year. And now, guys, we go back to that live picture in the room where the meeting is. You can see President Trump walking in for this roundtable discussion. I'll send it back to you as the president walks in. You guys can talk about what he's going to be saying and what this meeting will be.
I'll tell you what, Jared, I wonder if we have microphones in there, if we can listen in a little bit.
Yeah, you can actually hear the chairs moving there. Let's listen.
Thank you all very much. It's a great honor, and I'll be here many times. We're building a lot of wall. We're going to look at a piece of it today, and I was just told that it had a tremendous, it's had a tremendous impact already, the piece that we're going to be looking at. But we have under contract and under construction. We have a lot of things happening, and we expect to have close to 400 miles done within about 2 years from now. That's a lot. 400 miles will cover most of it. I just want to thank everybody for being here. We have some of our great people from the state, and of all places, it's California, and we love California. But those people wanted us to build wall, and we got it built, including the wall in San Diego, which is pretty much completed, and it's had a tremendous impact. That wall has had, Kevin, a tremendous impact. So I want to thank the Border Patrol station in Calexico, and it's been a great group of people. I just met them backstage, and the way you work is pretty incredible, and the job you do is beyond belief. We have a system that's full. It's just full. And I was telling some of the people before, if it's full, there's nothing you can do about it. We have some horrible court decisions that have been made over the years. It's very unfair, and that's the way it is. But the system is full. And when it's full, there's nothing you can do. You have to say, I'm sorry, we can't take you. We've been trying to take people, and I have to disagree with it. We've been trying to take people, and you can't do it. You can't do it. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to look at it very, very strongly. I'd like to thank Secretary Nielsen for being here, General Semonite, Chief of the Army Corps of Engineers, for being here, really thank you very much. It's been fantastic, the job you've done. And you're going to be speaking later on and explaining exactly what's happening with the wall and how much. In fact, we're going to be doing some of it now, I think. Probably a better time to do it. Commissioner Kevin McAleenan of our group, we have spent a lot of time together, and Kevin, you're doing a great job, and thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. California Assemblywoman Melissa Melendez, we appreciate very much, Melissa. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd, been a friend of mine for a long time and making a lot of progress, Brandon. And I'll tell you, we're really making progress in letting people know that this is an absolute emergency. I see that some of our biggest opponents over the last 2 days have said, you know what, it really is an emergency. They can't believe what's happening. And part of it is because of the fact that the country is doing so well. And part of it's just a scam. People want to come in, and they shouldn't be coming in. They shouldn't be coming in. And there are people that are causing problems, and gang members and lots of others. And we're getting them out. We're stopping them for the most part, but we're getting them out when they do get in. And nobody's done the job we've done. National Border Patrol Council President, so I want to thank you very much. You've been fantastic. And several members of law enforcement. I want to also thank Leader Kevin McCarthy, came in from Washington with us today. He's been an amazing leader. The relationship is the best we've ever had, I think, as Republicans. The unification, the unified nature of what we're doing has been really something very special, and I want to thank Kevin very much. You're doing a fantastic job. I appreciate it. And I think you and your group are going to be leading the charge in getting rid of some of these horrible loopholes that everybody knows is pretty bad, whether it's catch and release or whether it's visa lottery. So many of them. Chain migration, it's a total disaster. The asylum laws are broken. They're totally broken. And look, I inherited this stuff, and we're going to get it fixed. We have to. So, Kevin, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you leading the charge. I also want to state that there is indeed an emergency on our southern border. It's been loud and clear. We're in court, and a lot of people aren't even bringing too many of the suits anymore. A lot of people are going to bring the suit. It's pretty hard for them to say there's not an emergency. We have a big emergency at our southern border. The United States had more than 70,000 illegal migrants rush our border. They rush our border, and we have military, and these are great military people. These are people that are strong and solid and love our country, but they can't act the way they would under other conditions, and there's not a lot they can do, but they've been doing it anyway, and we're going to bring up some more military. And I want to also thank Mexico, because Mexico, and I'm totally willing to close the border, but Mexico, of the last 4 days, has done more than they've ever done. We were talking about that before, Kevin. They're apprehending people now by the thousands and bringing them back to their countries, bringing them back to where they came from. And I think you see that. That's at their southern border. And that's a big difference. That'll help us, pretty much 90%, 80%. What do you think, fellas? Pretty close, right? But that's a big difference. They've never done that before. I mean, when I say never done, I mean like in 30 years they've never done it like they're doing it right now. So the crisis is a direct result of the obstruction by Democrats in Congress, and we have to do something about it, and we're going to. And I think a lot of the Democrats feel that way too. I think they feel it. They see it. There's not much they can do but to say, wow, what was that I just saw on television? Since October, agents along the 70-mile stretch of border here in El Centro sector have seen a nearly 400% increase in family units arriving in the sector. And you compare that with other years, pretty amazing. But what we've done and what we're doing, you're going to see some very, very strong results. And as soon as the barriers or the walls, I like calling them walls, because that's what they are, go up, you're going to have a tremendous impact. where we are going to be in a little while, I've heard from people in that area that the impact has been incredible. It's a colossal surge, and it's overwhelming our immigration system, and we can't let that happen. So as I say, and this is our new statement, the system is full, can't take you anymore. Whether it's asylum, whether it's anything you want, it's illegal immigration, can't take you anymore. We can't take you. Our country is full, our area is full, the sector is full. Can't take you anymore, I'm sorry, can't happen. So turn around, that's the way it is. If you look at our southern border, the number of people and the amount of drugs, human trafficking. The human trafficking is something that nobody used to talk about. I talk about it. It's a terrible thing. It's ancient, and it's never been bigger than it is modern right now, today. All over the world, by the way, not just here, all over the world. Human trafficking, a terrible thing. And they come into the areas of the border where you don't have the wall. They don't come through your points of entry. They come into areas where you don't have the wall. And they make a left or they make a right. They come right into the country, loaded up with people in many cases, and it's pretty sad. By the end of next year, we'll have completed or begun construction, and that's what we're really here with the Army Corps of Engineers for. And I think what I'd like to do is, while we're on that subject, General, if you could just give a little detail of the wall that's under construction, what we've built, where we're going, because the press never likes to talk about it. They don't like to talk about what we've done. It doesn't fit their narrative, but we've done a lot, we've renovated a lot, and we're building a lot. And maybe you could give a little summation of that now.
Thanks, Mr. President. You know, before we talk concrete and steel, though, I think it's important to talk a little bit about, you know, maybe service to nation and protecting this country. 4 days ago, I was in a combat zone with our service members, and I saw the dedication that they have to be able to protect ourselves from overseas. Unbelievable service. But, sir, I would put these agents right in front of you today, the Customs and Border Patrol, of the same exact team. They protect America here from within. And I've been on the ground. I've seen the dedication they have. Right. And this is not for a paycheck. This is not for, you know, any other kind of reward. This is to be able to step up and take care of this country. And so I think that before we do anything else, we just got to make sure we have, you know, acknowledge the great work that these guys do. Phenomenal job. When it comes to the actual construction, the Corps of Engineers is very, very proud to work for Secretary Nielsen and the Commissioner. We have put in the ground over 82 miles that is up to date. And then right now, by the end of this year, we'll have another 97 miles that will go in. And I'm really talking the entire depth of the border, all the way across from Texas into California. And then, sir, with the money that both Congress has appropriated and other money that you've been able to direct, we will put in the ground another 277 miles in the next year. What that will end up with is by the end of around December of 2020, the total amount of money that we will have put in the ground in the last couple of years will be about 450 miles. That's probably about $8 billion, in total about 33 different projects. There are a lot of different complexities. Some of that is on federal land, some of that is on private land. Some of it can be done relatively quick because you don't have to have a land acquisition. Others we want to make sure we do through due diligence. But when it comes to both the capacity of the contract community to be able to execute this, the dedication of CBP and DHS to be able to set the conditions for us to be able to build, and then for our team on the ground, we are committed to continue to be able to make this happen.
Thank you very much, General. So you heard the numbers. The numbers are really spectacular. We've gotten it, and it's very, very tough to get money from the Democrats. I'm getting it for everything else, but we don't get it for the wall. But the good news is we are getting it for the ports of entry. We are getting it for machinery, the drug detection machinery. We're getting a lot of money coming in, and that's good. The wall is like pulling teeth. It's pretty tough. I want to just say, ICE Special Agent in charge, Dave Shaw. Where are you, Dave? Dave, thank you very much for doing a great job. Appreciate it very much. We also have, in addition to Kevin McCarthy, we have some of our great people in Congress, and I want to thank you all for being here. Doug LaMalfa, Duncan Hunter. Where's Duncan? Where's Duncan? Hi, Duncan. Hi. Hi. He was right back there. Thank you, Duncan. Ken Calvert, Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Chuck Fleischman. Chuck, thanks. Great job you're doing. Tom McClintock. What a good name that is. My friend, too. Thank you, Tom, very much. Kay Granger. Kay, thank you very much. Great job. And Mike Rogers. Thanks, Mike. Really terrific. And they have been working hard, working all the time. This is one of the big things that they work on. They feel so strongly about it. So with that, I'd like to maybe ask you to say a few words, Gloria. And I appreciate what I see over there. That's very nice.
Thank you, Mr. President, very much. On behalf of the men and women of the El Centro sector and myself, we're extremely honored that you took the time to come out here, learn about our challenges, our needs out here in the 70-mile border that our agents patrol. You're absolutely correct, General. These men and women go above and beyond the call of duty here for the work that they handle on that border. We are part of several other sectors on the southern border that are overwhelmed. Our resources are extremely strained. We are not prepared to deal with the amount of people, family units and children, and now organized caravans that are coming across this border today. Our agents are being stretched in so many different directions. I am truly proud of every single one of them because they do so much to protect this country, and they've been continue with the processing and enduring the callous actions of these smugglers. Here in this sector, just this year, fiscal year 19, we have identified 193 fake families, people who are just teaming up kids with them to come through because they know that they can get a court date later and be able to get released into the community. So those are the challenges that the agents are dealing with, but they're out there, they're trying to investigate as much as they can to get it done. We touched on the wall, and you know, we're very fortunate here in the El Centro sector. We have about 58 miles of border barrier. Most of it is old. It's ineffective for us nowadays. It's over 20 years old. And for groups that come over, it's very easily for them to cross. So fortunately, with your approval, last year, we were able to construct with the help of DOD. By the way, DOD, phenomenal.
Good.
Phenomenal support that we've been receiving from the Department of Defense. Without their support, we wouldn't be as efficient as we are operationally because they are here providing us that support from the behind the scenes. Right now, we have 37 Marines out there monitoring cameras for us.
Yeah.
So those are 37 Border Patrol agents that don't have to be doing that duty because they're on the front line. But one of the things I wanted to bring up was that border wall was constructed in 8 months, from February to October. As soon as it was completed, we started measuring and we started monitoring its effectiveness. So for the first quarter of FY19, we have had many efficiencies noted. For example, illegal entries in general, they decreased by 75%. Central American people that used to get arrested right through that area decreased by 86%. Indian nationals, this sector was leading the country with Indian national apprehensions for like 2 or 3 years. The wall goes up, it drops by 56%. The use of force incidents, which are more important to me than anything, because it's assaults and incidents that directly affect our Border Patrol agents doing the job on the border, they drop by 65% in those 2 miles of 30-foot border wall. So the border wall works for us. For Border Patrol agents, a border wall system is what works. We need the border barrier. We need to provide the requirements that meet our need. In this case for us, it's 30 feet high. That's what we asked for, and that's what was provided. So thank you. On behalf of the Border Patrol here for allowing us to have that. Thank you. Very much appreciate it.
And usually that 35% is coming around. They're not going over because when people are watching, they're not going over. They're going around where it ends. So it goes and it ends and they'll go around because it's virtually 100% effective in terms of going through. So as we extend it, it becomes, as you folks know better than anybody, as we extend it, it becomes virtually impossible except for a Mount Everest type climber. And there aren't too many of them. It becomes virtually impossible to go through. So that's really something. Those are great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did ask the team of agents They did not want you to leave from here, because I know your time is precious. They wanted to present you with a nice memento in appreciation for all the support that you've given us. So we went ahead and secured a piece of the new border wall that is out here in El Centro sector. And I would like to present this to you.
Thank you very much.
It reads this way. It says, number 45. Mr. President, the agents and employees of the U.S. Border Patrol, El Centro sector, are the tip of the spear, proudly defending America's borders. In recognition of your commitment and unwavering support for the men and women on the front lines and the border security mission of the United States, we would like to present you with this piece of the first 30-foot border wall installed along the United States border with Mexico. Honor first, United States Border Patrol, El Centro sector, April 5th, 2019.
Thank you.
So thank you very
Gloria.
much.
That's a heavy piece
Yes,
of wall.
it is. Yes, it is. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll keep it here.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please.
Oh, sure. I think Gloria probably said it quite well, and General Semonite. I just want to thank you always for coming out to the field to listen to the men and women. We greatly appreciate your support. And I want to thank all of our folks from Congress for being here. We really appreciate you listening to the men and women who are on the tip of the spear, as Gloria said, and helping us resource the department to do the mission that you've given us. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Brandon?
President, thank you very much for having me here. The men and women of the Border Patrol really appreciate your time. We know that Air Force One has never seen, in your predecessor's time, Air Force One has never been this close to the border before. So these men and women here, they greatly appreciate you coming out and the time that you've given them. By the way, I didn't think Secret Service was supposed to let guns in the room.
Yeah,
What's up with that?
We trust him, I think.
On a serious note, I began my career right here in El Centro 21 years ago in the El Centro sector. I worked with people like Butch Malden, Pat Whipple, Mario Campos, Mike Matsky. We worked pre-wall, post-wall. We've seen what happens when walls are built. We've seen how illegal immigration is driven low. When we build those physical barriers, people say that it's archaic. People say that they don't work, but in reality, and what Chief Chavez just explained, those walls do in fact work. Frankly, and I appreciate the congressmen that are here because I know that they support your agenda. But for those congressmen that want to be obstructionists, I say, if they're not going to be part of the solution, at least get out of your way. Let your administration do what needs to be done to get the border secure. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, I just want to thank you. You've been an incredible representative of your men and women, I can tell you that. He's constantly getting us to do what's right, and Chris and so many others. You guys are fantastic, and I appreciate it. Even from before I started, they were calling. They want to see it happen, and it's happening, and I want to just thank you very much. When you talk about previous administration, so we have a stretch along the Rio Grande where, and you people know exactly where I'm talking about, it's about 38 miles, done by actually both previous administrations. It was sort of done as a combination of one going into the other. And it's a wall, not a good-looking wall, it's a wall. It's got 36 doors in it, big doors, very big doors, and they never put the doors on. So it's 38 miles with 36 doors that you can drive a truck through. There's only one problem, they never put the doors on it. So we're putting the doors on it, or even better, maybe not putting any doors. I said maybe you do it without the doors, because putting the doors on costs more than the property is worth. I'd rather give the money for the property and just say bye-bye or sell it to somebody on the other side. But I mean, literally putting the doors on costs more money. I said, what's the property worth on the other side? Much less than the doors. These are doors with the hydraulic. They need hydraulic because they're so heavy, which is ridiculous in itself. But so that's the kind of thinking that went into this. So now we're filling up those big those big gaping wounds in this wall, and it's going to have a big effect, and we're adding to it very substantially on that area, the Rio Grande area. And you know exactly the area I'm talking about, right? You never saw anything like that. He said, I've never seen this one before. A wall and big holes in it. So a lot of good things are happening. Would you like to say a few words, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome to California. Margaret
Appreciate
Mims, Sheriff of Fresno,
Yes.
California. And thank you for your personal attention to the very important issue of border security. You know, I talk to local law enforcement across our nation, and always the #1 issue is border security when we talk about our issues. An uncontrolled, unsecure border directly affects our local communities, and without a secure border, transnational gangs, human traffickers, and drug cartels will take advantage of any opportunity to exploit our current border crisis to further their criminal behavior in our local communities. We've experienced this firsthand. We've seen increased fentanyl traffickers and deaths in the Central Valley of California as a result of fentanyl overdoses. We've also seen MS-13 gang members from El Salvador commit horrendous, vicious murders. Our investigations into this gang resulted in connecting 18 homicides committed in 3 western states. I want to commend all of our federal law enforcement partners from Homeland Security and especially the Border Patrol today, because what you do here makes a difference in our local communities. And the job that you do is under very difficult circumstances. Mr. President, there is a border crisis, and this crisis does not stay at the border. It trickles into our local communities, stretching the resources of local agencies. We must do everything we can to protect our communities from this threat. Border security is more important now than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're right about that. It goes into Iowa and Idaho and New Hampshire, and you know, it's not the border, it's the border, and then they come in and you end up in places that you would never think of the kind of crime that we see. And it comes right through this border. It starts right here. That's why if we stop them at the southern border of Mexico, which right now Mexico is doing, that would be a fantastic thing, and I think that's happening. I think it's never been before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. All of a sudden, Mexico's doing terrifically. They have to, because you've all seen, and I don't want to do this, but it would be a very profitable situation. We're going to have to tariff the cars coming in from Mexico to the United States. And if that doesn't work, which it will, we'll close the border. Somebody said it will take a year. No, it won't take a year. It'll take a day. They wrote, you know, a lot of fake news. I said in a year. Well, the tariffs will work, #1, but what will really work is the closing of the border. We hope we don't have to do that, but I'll do it because ultimately the security of our nation is the most important thing. And we're not even talking about the drugs, a massive amount of drugs that pours through. And it would have a tremendous impact. And we're going to be working on that. We've been working on that. We've done a tremendous job on drugs coming into the country. If you look at some of the numbers, we're having a news conference next week at the White House on the impact that we've had between opioid and all of the other problems we have with drugs. Different drugs than we had 10, 15, 20 years ago, much different, but also the drugs coming in through the border. We've had a great impact. Joseph, would you like to say a few words? Looks like he's in good shape, this guy.
Charles, you want to give the presentation?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Good.
Mr. President, good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming here to Calexico Station. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the border wall and what it's done for us here and the activity levels. And when I talk about activity levels, I'm not just referencing the illegal apprehensions or the legal entries. I'm also talking about things like assaults, uses of force, manpower deployments, and statistics related to OTMs other than Mexicans, and also family units. Now, immediately, like you said, we saw some incredible results from the border wall. We saw a 75% decrease in the first quarter of fiscal year 19 in illegal entries, 65% decrease in assaults and uses of force. Prior to that, prior to the construction, we were #1 in the nation in uses of force and #2 in the nation in assaults. So that's been huge for us. Prior to the construction of the wall, we had after the construction of the wall, we had an 86% decrease in illegal aliens from the Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. We also saw that we were able to redeploy, decrease 38% of our manpower in those areas and deploy them to other parts of the border so that they could be more effective out there. We have apprehended aliens from 40 different unique countries across the globe. Now, in support of the border wall, when you move to other parts of the border where the fence is less effective, we'll speak about downtown Calexico, for instance. We have a older, much less effective picket-style fence, much shorter, 15 feet. Luckily, we were able to bolster that infrastructure with concertina wire in early December.
Right.
The DoD helped with that.
Very effective.
Very effective. 53% decrease in illegal entries after the concertina wire was deployed. We also had some unintended consequences. We saw a 228% increase in fence breaches due to the inferiority of the fence in that area. These fence breaches have cost us $317,000 so far to repair, and they keep going. Now, contrast that with the new wall, and we've only seen 3 breaches post-construction, which is, compare that, we have total, I said 228% increase, but it's been a total of 538 since the C-wire went up in December.
Right.
These breaches, though, they don't just represent the ease in which that aliens can enter the United States, they also represent a significant challenge and security and safety challenge to our Border Patrol agents on the lines. We saw a 143% increase in the assaults against our agents in this area with the breaches. A couple of months ago, an agent was responding to a breach where several illegal aliens had already pushed through the border. He was struck in the back of the neck with a rock and required hospitalization. Just last month, a female agent was monitoring cross-border traffic when an illegal alien, a self-admitted gang member, with a rusted lawnmower blade in his hand, threw it through the agent's closed window. Luckily, she saw the assailant out of the corner of her eye as he was coming at her, and she was able to actually put up her left hand and block that lawnmower blade from hitting her in the face, but she did sustain injuries to her arm. So it's a significant challenge to us. I referenced the OTM and family unit statistics earlier. The stretch of border now, where specifically in the Calexico station where we see all of those aliens, just happens to be where we have the oldest, most outdated infrastructure in the sector. It's the old, what we call the landing mat style fence. 90% of all the OTMs and family units that enter in in Calexico station enter through that area. It represents a 77% increase over the same time last year. Mr. President, at the end of the day, walls work, infrastructure works. We need more wall, we need more manpower, and we need more technology. And the mix of those is incredibly important. I can't stress that enough.
Thank you, Joseph. The people of Calexico have been incredible. They've really rolled out the red carpet. We appreciate it. And let me ask you a question. You or Brandon or both, you could ask. So what do you do when we have military and we have the great Border Patrol and we have everybody here, but you have big open sections for miles and miles before we build the wall? We're building it now, but before. How do you stop these large numbers of people coming? You're not, look, other countries, what they do is very, very tough. We can't do what they do. You understand that. We can't do what they do. We don't want to do what they do. But how do you stop these large, sometimes
physically keep them out of the country? That's what barriers are for. They physically keep people out.
Yeah.
And the groups, as you know, are going up. It used to be that we'd see maybe one group a year of over 100.
Yeah.
We've already seen over 100 groups of over 100 people, which is 100 people breaching our border at one time that the Border Patrol goes and picks up. And they're being very, as usual, humble. They also save thousands of people every year, many of whom have been left for dead by the smugglers and traffickers. So they take all parts of their mission seriously, but we need to resource them so they can do them all.
And so I just speak to the folks in the first, second, third row, very special people, and some of the fourth row I see. System's full. Can't take any more. Sorry, folks. Can't take any more. Asylum. You know, I look at some of these asylum people. They're gang members. They're not afraid of anything. They have lawyers greeting them. They read what the lawyer tells them to read. They're gang members. And they say, I fear for my life. They're the ones that are causing fear for life. It's a scam, okay? It's a scam. It's a hoax. I know about hoaxes. I just went through a hoax. So our system is full. We're not taking them anymore, okay? Can't do it. You can't do it. You know, you can go up to a point, but we can't do it anymore. Please.
Sir, I appreciate it. Thanks
Thank
for letting
you.
me speak.
Thank you very much.
Harrison. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here on behalf of ICE. Like you said, America is facing an unprecedented crisis at the border. The sheer volume of family units crossing the border has overwhelmed ICE's limited resources, and as a result, more than 126,000 people have been released into the U.S. since the end of last year. The crisis is further amplified by the lack of space in our detention facilities, which is simply inadequate to handle the volume of illegal border crossings occurring daily. Families are being released at the border with nothing more than a notice to appear in court, knowing full well that none of them ever will. Meanwhile, ICE is exhausting its limited resources trying to increase bed space capacity for single adults. At this point, we need more resources, including more officers and agents along the border and in the interior. We need the funding and the authority to detain these aliens during their immigration proceedings. In addition, as you know, current laws and court rulings like the judicial interpretation of the Flores Settlement Agreement have created pull factors that basically incentivize illegal migrants to cross our border by the thousands every day. We must amend these outdated laws to deter the illegal immigration and prevent the effective operation of our lawful immigration system. America's also facing a public safety crisis. ICE has had to reassign hundreds of officers to the border, limiting our ability to arrest, remove criminal aliens, gang members, and public safety threats from our communities. Just in fiscal year 2018, ICE arrested approximately 10,000 gang members, including 2,000 that were members of the MS-13 gang. We also seized over 1 million pounds of narcotics, including 2,700 pounds of fentanyl. Any reduction in these vital law enforcement efforts creates an unnecessary and unacceptable risk in our communities and for our citizens. I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
You know, you mentioned fentanyl. So, as you know, we're working on a trade deal with China. That's part of it. They've agreed that they will not be, essentially not sending it. They're going to criminalize it, which it's not criminalized right now. And they're going to classify it in such a way that it's very hard to send, make, and a lot of other things. So we have some pretty good things coming on because it comes, a lot of it, I guess most of it comes in from China. And President Xi himself has told me they're going to do that. We have an agreement, and they have actually already started, so that'll help you a lot.
Thanks, sir.
Some of it's coming right in here, right to Mexico, and then across. So I think we're going to take care of a lot of it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Welcome to Calexico, if I may.
Thank you.
What we are currently encountering along the border, the entire southwest border, is truly a border humanitarian issue. The influx of people, especially from Central America, is completely overwhelming our agents and our agency. The apprehension demographic has completely changed from what it was in the past. In previous years, the majority of our arrests were from people from Mexico. Now those arrests are from Central America. Especially with the threat that we have now of organized caravans coming to our borders and bringing thousands of people. Mr. President, now the majority of our agents are assigned to transportation duties, processing duties, and hospital watch. Here at All Central Sector, that is with a workforce that is approximately 300 agents below the allowed amount. To put things into perspective, approximately 60 agents per day are assigned to these duties. If you look over here, that can go to the preparation of the food, the carrying of the unaccompanied children, and the helping the family units. Those are 60 agents that can and should be patrolling our border. That affects our national security. As previously stated, our Central Sector has seen an increase of 400% of family unit apprehensions. That's 400%. We've seen an increase of 24% in the apprehensions of unaccompanied children. What we're seeing is minors being exploited and being implanted into these fake family units. Transnational criminal organizations are coaching these families and even providing them with fraudulent documents to assist them with their claim. Very recently here in our Central Sector, through an operation, we were able to rescue 6 minors that had been implanted into these fake family units. What's even more concerning is these children range from a 9-month-old infant to a 14-year-old. Something that's also that we're beginning to see are Mexican nationals claiming that they are from Central America in an attempt to exploit these loopholes and these old, outdated immigration laws. Mr. President, we are in daily communication with consulates from all over the world in an attempt to verify these family unit claims. This task is nearly impossible because we don't have the resources or just the logistics of what it takes to help us. This is complete crisis. We need your assistance. We need additional agents. We need resources. We are completely overwhelmed as agents and as an agency. Thank you for your assistance.
Okay, good, and we'll take care of it. And I agree with you. Good job. We'll take care of it. Your turn.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank you for your leadership on border security because the impacts are definitely felt in California. And the second thing I want to do is on behalf of my constituents and all Californians, I want to thank all of the men and women here whose job it is to make sure that that border is secure. And it's made more and more difficult every single day by the majority party in California. As you recall, Governor Brown, when he was in office, he reluctantly allowed National Guard troops to go down to the border to assist. That's true. And then Governor Newsom got into office and he very quickly said, no more National Guard troops down at the border. We don't want to assist. That comes from the fact that the Democrats in California decided that California would be a sanctuary state. That if you're an illegal immigrant and you want to come into the United States, California is the place that you want to come. We are going to roll out the red carpet. That causes a strain not only on our taxpayers, not only on law enforcement, not only on our schools. I mean, it is across the board. It is felt everywhere.
And by the way, it makes it much tougher for everybody. I mean,
That's
they
right.
pour into these areas that sanctuary cities are a disaster, and they pour in, and a lot of the places in California, they don't want to be sanctuary cities. They're
No,
actually
they don't.
asking not to be a sanctuary city, which is
We had a
pretty
lot of
incredible.
cities across California.
Absolutely.
A lot of people go to their city councils and demand that their city councils state for the record that they would not become
Right.
a sanctuary city, which of course didn't work because the legislature said, no, we're going to become a sanctuary state. So we have the issue of drugs, which everyone here has spoken about. I don't need to add on to that. I think we're very clear on the problems with the drugs. And we're very clear on the financial burden that this places on this country and on this state. But when everyone else in the world wants to say this is not a crisis, what I would say to them is Obama's secretary, just I think last week, Jay Johnson said he cannot imagine how these agents are managing the border and that it is a crisis. So if Jay Johnson can acknowledge it, I would hope that Democrats across this country could acknowledge it as well. Because what is happening is Democrats are saying they want to take our border and change it from a border into a crosswalk. And we cannot have that.
Well, Jay Johnson was great. He very strong statement. And Mr. Morgan, too, who worked for President Obama, said this is a problem. Has been, not just now. I mean, this has been going on. I think probably the economy and a lot of other things have brought him up even more. We've had some very bad court decisions. The Flores decision is a disaster, I have to tell you. Judge Flores, whoever you may be, that decision is a disaster for our country, a disaster. And we're working on that. But I just want to thank you. Great job you're doing. Really appreciate it. We're going to get it taken care of. It's all going to come together. Thank you. Kevin, please.
Just very quickly, Mr. President, just want to echo Secretary Nielsen, Chief Chavez, thank you for coming down to see us, to listen to our men and women, talk about the progress we're making, and you'll see that with the resources that you've supported for the border, with General Semonite's team's assistance. That wall is formidable. It's making an impact in the security of this sector, but we need to continue to work with Congress on improving the laws. As you noted, we need partnership from Mexico on these flows and tackling the criminals that are exploiting these individuals and really the ones that are profiting from this entire cycle. And I just want to thank my men and women who do a tremendous job here every day. Very, very proud of their commitment, even though they're facing extreme challenges, as you've heard.
And there's central casting. I've never seen a group of people like this. Everyone's in perfect shape. And you're proud of what you do, right? You wouldn't trade places with me for anything. I know that, right? You're smart. Don't do it. Don't do it. You know, Dave, you were mentioning before about, you know, people coming in and they come in and they come in. You don't have to take them in. When your system is packed, when you cannot get another person in, when every one of your detention areas is teeming and you have to let people go into a country they can't take them. Can't take them. We don't have room. We don't have room. That means you can't take them. You don't understand it. I don't think anyone's ever expressed it like that, but I'm expressing it like that. When it's full, it's full. You can't take them. They go back to Mexico, and Mexico will bring them back to their country, okay? Or if they're Mexican, it's a step easier, frankly. And again, over the last 4 days, Mexico's been very nice, okay? So just because you made a point that was very interesting. But you can't take them, you can't take them. There's nothing you can do, okay? I'd like to maybe end by having a man who's really been a help, and that's Kevin McCarthy. You can speak on behalf of your great representatives that are here with you. And maybe you could stand up and say a few words, Kevin, because you've been very much at the forefront of this fight, and you love this state very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And on behalf of all these members of Congress, we want to thank you. We know you're on the front line. And we do not intend for you to be doing the job they're asking you to do today. We think you should be on the border, and we don't think that's right. We realize the current law, the way asylum is applied, the way the catch and release, does not allow you to do your job correctly. And I don't believe it was the intent of what America intended when they passed these bills. We want to work bipartisan or any way possible, but we've got to solve this problem. It is a crisis. We know you are being overloaded, but I want you to know that we think it's a top priority. We will work with this president, and we will work with anybody who wants to solve this problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Kevin. And, Kevin mentioned catch and release. You catch them, and you release them. I'm saying this for them because you people all get it. It's the dumbest thing anyone's ever heard. Maybe I'm trying to figure out which is the dumbest. Is it chain migration or is it visa lottery? Pick them out of that. Let's go. You think they're giving us their finest? I don't think so, right? I don't think so. It's crazy. And we have to work with the Democrats and get it over. We have to, look, we need common sense in our country. This is about common sense. This is about anything other than common sense. And that's what we need. Now, Gloria's asked me to recognize, and she will recognize, 3 people that she thinks are just outstanding. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity. There are 3 individuals in this audience today that I did not want to miss the opportunity to recognize in your presence. So we have an agent. His name is Cesar Arroyo. Cesar, if you could please stand. Cesar Arroyo was off duty one night with his family. It was his birthday. He was headed to a local restaurant to celebrate that birthday. Well, he witnessed an accident, and the vehicle that was involved in the accident went airborne and fell into an irrigation canal. In the vehicle was a mother and 3 children, and to include an infant in the back seat. Cesar immediately jumped out of his vehicle, ran across the street and into the canal, and started working to save those individuals. All 4 people out of that vehicle were pulled to safety to the canal bank, while others got there to help him and assisted. But it was his actions that truly reflect the character of what a Border Patrol agent is, and I wanted to recognize those actions here today.
Great job.
There is another Border Patrol agent. His name is Carlos Lara. And Carlos was on duty as well. And Carlos witnessed an individual jump in, cross the border illegally, jump into an irrigation canal, and immediately took action to also jump in and rescue that individual and pull him to safety. So for Carlos' actions as well, I wanted to recognize that, Mr. President, because that happens on a regular basis here. But that day, he went through an extreme hardship because of all the things he had to do to get to that person. And eventually he was able to bring him to safety as well. So thank you, Carlos, for your actions as well. Thank you. And Mr. President, last but not least, we have extraordinary mission support personnel, our civilian workforce, that works tirelessly behind the scenes to get the job done so that these Border Patrol agents are able to get to the front line and get the work done. From admin support secretaries, clerks, to timekeepers, to logistics directors, to logistics personnel, our mechanics, that we couldn't get, a vehicle ready to go in the field without their help. We have a young lady here today. Her name is Nubia Avalos, and Ms. Nubia is like our unsung hero behind the scenes, who is constantly delivering excellence in every task that we assign to her. This young lady here is the one in charge of your next 11 miles of 30-foot border wall that are going to start in June of 2019. Thank you.
She'll get it done on time, on budget, maybe under budget, right? Under time, under budget. That's happened too, right? Thank you very much. Congratulations. I just want to thank everybody. We're now going over to look at the new section of wall, and we have a lot of it going up. And again, General, I want to thank you for the job. You really got it together. We have a lot of work under construction, but a lot more is coming in the very, very soon. Money's been transferred, money's been approved, and that wasn't easy. When you have people that don't want to give you money, that's not so easy. But we know we need it. We had no choice. So I just want to thank you all, and let's go see the wall. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You said you want to see asylum reform. What do you specifically want to do about it? Governor Newsom today saying that some of your ideas regarding asylum show a disregard for the Constitution.
Well, Governor Newsom honestly is living in a different world, and that's a very dangerous world he's living in. And if he keeps living there, lots of problems for the people of California. They don't want that. They want to be secure. They want to be safe. And not only asylum, but many other things, loopholes. When you have an asylum situation where rough, tough people with criminal records are asking for asylum, it doesn't work that way. So we have a full system. Nothing we can do. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's go.
And we have been watching live as the President has had a roundtable discussion with members of the Border Patrol, that discussion going for, I would estimate, close to an hour. And we heard from everyone that was sitting around that table. The narrative, other than the last few seconds there, very on point, other than what sounded like a reporter asking a question off camera that didn't quite fit the narrative. We've been talking with Ron B., an expert in international relations. Your take on what we just saw?
Well, my first thought is, remember the State of the Union address where someone stands up who's done something well? This reminded me of a State of the Wall address. That this was making a report on, here's the first section, we have the next section coming, we're going to have 400 more miles of it by the end of his presidency, or this particular 4-year period of time. So I think he controlled the message, and it was a combination of State of the Union, but State of the Wall, and the Commander-in-Chief addressing his troops.
How do you, for people who are watching,
Yeah.
how do you help them reconcile what they're seeing and hearing? So you have Border Patrol agents who are on the front lines, who are giving a lot of numbers about the things they are dealing with.
Right.
You heard Gloria Chavez, who's a Border Patrol agent there in the Calexico area, talking about 193 fake families, she said,
Right.
saying that some migrants are using children to seem like a family just so they can get into the U.S. And, do people look at this skeptically because this has been orchestrated by the White House, or do they look at these men and women who work hard every day and say, you know what, they're saying that that a physical barrier helps. They're saying that this is difficult.
The answer is yes. Both you're going to hear, because the President's presenting the Border Patrol's point of view by having it on your program, right? He's also going to be looked at skeptically because this is presidential optics in the 2020 election, right before he's going to raise money in Los Angeles for that re-election. So it's both. I think he's trying to give the Border Patrol, who supported the president, a voice, and he certainly did so today. But don't get me wrong, this was very well orchestrated.
All right. Well, Ron, we're going to come back to you here in a moment. We want to talk a little bit about what's happening outside that room, because again, there have been people outside, both supporters and protesters. I want to get to Laura Acevedo, who was at the outlet mall in Calexico, where I think there's been some chanting there going on, because she moved locations. At one point, she was near the section of fence that the president will be seeing in a short time here. So Laura, what are you seeing on your end?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of protesters supporting Trump, excuse me. I want to take your glance over this way. You can see them. They have been lined up here. They are waiting in hopes that the president's motorcade comes over this way right now. They stopped their chanting, but I want to direct your attention over to this street here. You can see that police are blocking the area off. This is where we believe the president is going to come in. There are some people that are here in opposition to the president. They are saying that he is not welcome here. You can see this sign right behind me that says, "Even your ancestors are ashamed." They have been standing on opposite sides of the street. The Trump supporters were chanting, the others also chanting, saying families united, not divided. They were chanting that in Spanish. So again, what is believed to, what's going to happen, we think, is that the president is going to come in this way. We have seen an increased presence in Calexico police, also Border Patrol and Homeland Security police. But I want to show you where we are in relation to where we were earlier. The border fence is just a couple of feet behind me. You can see the chanters have started once again, so I'll let you take a listen. USA! 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 So again, you can hear them here. They are waiting. They are anxious and hopeful that the president is going to come in this direction. They were chanting USA. They were chanting Trump 2020. They were also chanting Build That Wall. So we are going to stay put here and wait to see if the president does arrive on the motorcade in this direction. But just over my left shoulder, I want to show you is the Customs and Border Protection facility where the president was at that roundtable discussion. So not very far. That is why everybody has staged here, because they think this is the route that he's going to take.
And we should find out shortly. Laura Acevedo, appreciate that.
And Brian Schlonsky, also very near the wall at another location. Brian, what are you seeing where you are?
Well, Virginia and Jim, we're roughly maybe 2 or 3 football fields away from where Laura's standing. Laura is right over, you see the signs there for the outlet mall and some of the police lights. We could actually hear those chants that you heard in her live shot from where we are here. So we are along the newly constructed border fencing right here. We're actually stationed right in front of the plaque here, barring Donald Trump's name on it. That's because we had thought throughout the day possibly this would be the site that he would visit when he comes to check this out. Again, this is the newly constructed border fencing. It's 2.25 miles long. You see the steel beams here. They're 30 feet high, spaces in between them, and then there's the wire system in front and on top as well. This is the area here. We've talked about this before, that Border Patrol actually requested this fencing back when Barack Obama was in office, but they never broke ground on the project back then. As far as whether or not this is the area the president is going to view or not, you can see it's pretty calm over here. We were standing closer to the fencing earlier, and a Customs and Border Protection agent had us move out of the way, and you can see there's some national media gathered here as well, hoping this is the spot, and even some Trump supporters, tourists if you will, that came to take photos of that plaque. But we were able to drive down here roughly 10 minutes ago. As of now, though, there is a Border Protection truck blocking the entranceway. So if he was to come through here and come through that area where Laura is, we'll be ready for it. There is, of course, though, another 2-mile stretch of this. That could be the area he visits, so we'll be watching closely. Not as many police lights around us as there is around Laura, but anyways, this area would be the spot that we anticipate he may visit.
And Brian, in the time that you've been there, I mean, it certainly looks pretty quiet on the other side of that fence. Obviously, you can see through it. Has it been pretty much that way the time you've been there, just business as usual on the other side?
Well, that's what leads us to believe maybe this would be the area. You can see there's another section of, if you can see through those grates, there's another a barrier. This one definitely looks more like a wall on the other side. And then if we pan through, the port of entry is
very close to this side where we are, and there has not been as much activity. If I can look through these beams, it's tough to see if there are really much traffic at all going through there. There are some cars here lining up, as you see here, heading towards the port, and then that building, the sector building that Laura was referencing, is right over the road. So that street is still not blocked off to traffic, although there are some law enforcement vehicles and flashing lights in that area. But as far as on the other side of this, there's another protective barrier that looks pretty much like a wall and a big giant pile of dirt. So no people on this side that would be able to yell or talk to the president at all if he does indeed come to this section.
Brian, interesting that you point that out, because we do have the President of the United States at the border. It was pointed out during the meeting that we just watched live that Air Force One has never been parked this close to our border with Mexico. So you would expect, if they want to secure the president, you'd have to have some cooperation from the Mexican side, because, as you said, you can see through the wall, and if somebody wanted to do harm, they could bring it from the other side of the wall.
And that's something that we were discussing earlier when we were trying to determine where it would be that he would visit. Earlier, we were here yesterday, of course, as well, in the El Centro and Calexico area, and specifically in Calexico, that way down the border, it's a lot less protected. So if you were to walk down there, you really can see through to the other side. There are people everywhere. There's a lot of traffic going through there into the downtown area, if you will, of Calexico, a lot busier. But this new section of the border fencing that was just finished, this area, a lot more, a lot less going on the other side, so a lot more protected if this were to be the area that he visits. You mentioned some of the aircraft issues as well. Just as when we got to the area where the motorcade passed through earlier, when we were about 1.5 miles from the Air Naval facility there, the station there, they ended up flying those choppers overhead that were just making sure the area was secure. We saw that again when we pulled up over here. I haven't seen them in the last 10 minutes or so, but they were definitely flying around while the president was still talking, so possibly scouting out to make sure if this is the area he chooses, this is the safest spot. Definitely calm over here, though, but again, we're maybe 2 or 3 football fields away from all of those people that are surrounding Laura Acevedo over by the mall.
Yeah, Brian, really appreciate your vantage point. You don't have to go far in the community of Calexico to get to an area like where you are, where suddenly it just seems very desolate compared to getting to the shops proper in that area. Brian, thank you very much.
Now, that section of the border in Calexico just happens to be where President Trump is today. But of course, what they're talking about affects the entire border and all the communities that surround the border. Let's get to 10 News reporter Lauren Davis, who is in Otay Mesa, because Lauren, you know, it doesn't matter where you are. It certainly is something that's high interest as to what is going to happen with the border and enforcement as we go forward.
Absolutely, and you know here that this Otay Mesa border has been in the news all week long because they closed down 2 of the border crossings. Go ahead and take a look. Now, not on the American side, but on the Mexico side, you can see they are really feeling the pinch of those 2 lane closures. This is where a lot of manufacturers enter the country. One of them, of course, automakers. President Trump has threatened to put a 25% tariff on those automakers in Mexico if the country does not stop the drugs from coming through. The Otay Mesa Chamber of Commerce told me today this could be devastating to the manufacturers in Mexico and, of course, the businesses here in America, specifically Toyota trucks and Tesla parts that would have an additional 25% duty on them.
With a 25% duty, they would have to shift operations, or they would have to decrease their production if that happens, of course, because obviously we've seen things that are, I mean, threats that don't occur. I mean, 25% is it's a wild number. I mean, for a duty, it's just huge.
Yes, so just a big question for them as to whether or not that is going to happen. As you heard President Trump just say, he's had great cooperation with the country of Mexico over the last 4 days, so it looks like that might not occur, but they don't know right now. There are also companies that make radios and seats and other products that would be affected by that 25% tariff. So there's a huge impact here if President Trump follows through on that threat to add that 25% duty to those companies who, of course, make their living going to and from Mexico and America, and not to mention those truck drivers who get paid every time they come across the border. Reporting live in Otay Mesa at the border, Lauren Davis, 10 News.
Yeah, a lot of people wondering and nervous about what could happen. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it.
And we want to bring Ron B., expert in international relations, joining us on the set back into the conversation. Sure. We had mentioned earlier the 193 families that were pointed out that they found that were fake families because bad people had gotten kids and were taking advantage of them.
Right.
And near the end of the discussion, the president even said it's a hoax.
Yes.
Folks there that are going through this, that are in these caravans, the message will eventually get to them. This is all a hoax. How does that get absorbed?
Well, that's coming, I think, from our Border Patrol, simply because they've encountered this. I've heard similar stories from our region here, right here in downtown San Diego, right south of the border, at Friendship Park. The Border Patrol has said this has been the case. And one of the things they didn't mention that the Border Patrol believes is that the fake families are being sent as a fake left, go right, so the drug cartels can get drugs across where the Border Patrol is not. They don't talk about that because that's classified and they don't want that coming out. So it's consistent with what I've heard from the Border Patrol over the last couple of years, but it does not take away from the legitimate families who wish to come here for legitimate reasons. This is part of a very complicated issue that involves immigration, national security, controlling drugs, making sure terrorists don't come across the border. All of that wasn't mentioned very much. We've been focusing purely on the human element, which is very important, don't get me wrong, as a place of immigrants. So in any case, what I saw is he spoke to his base, he spoke to his funders, and he spoke to the front lines. And this was all orchestrated just to do that.
Help viewers reconcile the very different messages. So if our folks were here earlier, we heard County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
Right. From
his point of view, talking about the end of the safe release program, and that San Diego County is taking in and dealing with migrants who have come over legally, but there's been quite an influx in terms of number. Meanwhile, President Trump is talking about human trafficking, drug smuggling, and he said, we can't take any more. Turn around, go back, we can't take any more. Whereas Nathan Fletcher said, you know, this is the U.S., send us your huddled masses, you're poor, you're sick. In terms of this message where it's not surprising that you're seeing hearing very different messages, how do people at home decipher what they're hearing?
Well, they have to search the facts for themselves, I think. And the facts are, you have to look to see how many people have come across the border, how many have actually committed crimes and who have not. How many are being integrated into the communities and how many are not, and who's paying for it? I think you need to realize that we are a country where everyone wants to come here, and that's still the case from bad places. I think how you reconcile it is either through your political party, which has a different view, one view or the other, or through yourself, and I would recommend that your viewers do some research on their own and just not accept the rhetoric that's coming from both sides. I think it's usually somewhere in the middle. We need to accept people who need to have political asylum, and we need to also stop those coming to do us harm. There's got to be a place in the middle. We don't have that now in our political discourse.
And it's kind of trying to ride that line that will keep this debate alive as it goes along.
Well, and you know, the threat of the hammer about the tariffs, the closing the border, that's a message to Mexico. Keep doing what you're doing at the southern border, or this'll come around. It's a new government in Mexico, and they want to keep Americans happy. So the messaging was very clear to a variety of groups he wanted to get it across.
The sad thing is the political rhetoric is so loud, no matter what side you're looking at. There are very few elected people.
Welcome to the election season.
There are very few people who are elected.
You're shocked about this.
Yeah, who will actually be the voice of reason and go more down the middle, as you point out, because we're looking at examples of both. It isn't necessarily one or the other.
That's true. And California, voted for Hillary Clinton by over 1 million more votes than they voted for Donald Trump. He's very much aware of that, but there is still out in the rural communities where he had very strong support, as you saw the American flags along the road. That's going to speak very well to the rural communities where he had his support across the nation.
All right,
Ron, thank you. Yeah.
Well, let's get out to 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo, who is outside where there have been supporters gathered near her. We've seen some protesters earlier today, and you're very close to the wall. So what are you seeing now?
Well, Virginia, I can tell you that some of that crowd has since left since my last live shot. There is still a significant amount of people. However, I want to turn your attention behind me right now. You can see they are still here. They are wearing Make America Great Again signs. This sign says Heart 45. So they are still here. They are still hoping that the president comes in this direction. But I also wanted to show you these signs here. These two ladies have been standing on this corner. It says No Trumpy, Beto 2020. So there are people here protesting the president. And if you take a look over to the right of your screen, the baby Trump is floating still in the background. Those people brought that balloon out here early this morning. They are hoping that the president sees it. The president has said in the past that he thinks that balloon is unwelcoming. The people that brought it tell me that is their goal. That's why they brought it to Calexico. Now, I want to show you the street that we're on right now. Calexico police are blocking this off. This is right near the outlets. It is still unclear if this is the route the president is going to take, but there are Homeland Security police officers standing by just in case there is a DHS road, and back there is where the plaque is. It's where Brian Schlonsky was moments ago, and that is where the border fence is. But again, right now, still unknown where the president is going to go, but his supporters and those who don't support him are hoping that he comes right here where we are.
All right, Laura, appreciate it. And we expect that the president will be heading to the section of wall to inspect it shortly.
Kimberly Hunt has been covering this for us from the Naval Air Facility there. And Kim, what's going on there now? We're kind of in a holding pattern here, waiting for the president and the entourage to get to the fence and check it out.
Actually, Jim, we're beginning to see things pick up again here because people realize that the motorcade is about to come back to Naval Air Facility El Centro, and as you can see, the cars are lining up just outside the base. The president has been in Calexico. We've been following him as he is going now to the border to see that new section. He's had his roundtable. He has declared the system is full, that something has to change, speaking to law enforcement. But we know that he will be coming back here momentarily to get on Air Force One, which we can see right through this fence right here. He will be taking off about 3:15 to go up to LA, but a lot of people were already here when he touched down about 2 hours ago. And we talked to a couple of those people today. One of them is 20-year-old Cameron King, and he says he got up early and he didn't care how long it took. He had to wait. He wanted to see the president.
What brought me out today, I wanted to meet the president. I wanted to meet the president of the United States. I got a signature, talked to him for a brief second, and it was a really cool experience.
And Jake Allard was also with him. The two friends spent the morning here, and Jake got his hat signed. He was very happy about that. Let's hear from him.
I've been a big fan my entire life, ever since early high school. My friend was telling me, oh, this guy's awesome. He's going to run for president in a year or two. And he eventually did, and it became just this whole thing where we just wanted to know more about it. And the other people who were running, we just weren't with that. So we got to be really big fans of them. And this is as close as I could get other than at a rally. So I thought I might as well come here.
Yeah, that kind of excitement is exactly what we're seeing again. A lot of Make America Great Again hats gathering a lot of supporters ready for him to come by. It will be a quick trip out. He needs to be in LA this evening. He has a fundraiser in Beverly Hills. The president will attend that when he has wheels up here in El Centro at about 3:15. He then travels tomorrow to Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas he's speaking to the Republican Jewish Coalition. That fundraiser will be taking place tomorrow in Las Vegas. He has big-time donors. These tickets are costing anywhere from $15,000 to $150,000 if you want to really sit down and talk the ideas and the situations and what they're calling roundtables at these fundraisers, both in LA tonight and in Las Vegas tomorrow. But right here, people are waiting again, so we'll check back in because the motorcade will be coming back in shortly. Back to you.
Kimberly, appreciate the information and the reaction there from that gentleman that wanted to meet the president and actually got to do so. Let me ask you something, though. As I see it's a little breezy out there, what is the weather like and what's the temperature like out there?
It's warm, it's dry, warm, kind of East County, and yeah, the winds are picking up, and the people here are already excited. Hi, you guys are getting ready, aren't you? You got your American flags out, and there's probably 5-6 cars just right here where we are in this corner. But yes, Jim, it is windy out here, as it is a lot at this time of year in the East County, but all in all, not bad.
Kimberly, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
We have a very quick programming note for you guys. If you're wondering what happened to General Hospital, because normally it would air in this hour, it will air in its entirety when our coverage of the president's visit to the border concludes. So again, if you're waiting for General Hospital, it will be airing in its entirety right after we finish our live coverage of the president's visit.
You preempt General Hospital, you have your own drum on your hands. Be very careful. Matt Boone joins us from a migrant shelter that has been made up downtown. And Matt, tell us more about that, how this shelter is configured and what it's doing.
Jim, this is the result of some of those things that we've been discussing all morning and afternoon, the end of that so-called safe release policy. We actually got a tour inside of this shelter about 2 weeks ago when it opened. They take about 60 to 80, sometimes more than 100 migrants a day. Most of them are family units that have made it across the border legally through the asylum seeking process. Here they're able to get food, water, shelter, as well as medical care and legal aid services. They also provide them transportation and communication to points of contact throughout the country to try and get them to their final destinations. Most of these people only staying between 24 to 72 hours before they're able to make it out of here. So it is designed as a temporary shelter. This was something, though, in the purview of ICE and the Department of Homeland Security, however, before October, when they ended that safe release program. After that, local organizations, including the county and an organization known as the Jewish Family Service, stepped in to try and help these migrants that were really just being dumped on the streets. We spoke to the CEO of Jewish Family Service today, who helps operate the shelter, about what that process used to be like and what happened to it.
But they did take people to the airport, but they took people to the airport or to the bus station when they had tickets. What happened in October was they started taking people to transportation hubs without tickets, without cell phone, without any money, wearing shorts and flip-flops and not really prepared for travel.
That obviously created some issues. So now those people are being transferred from ICE to this facility. Some people actually are able, if they have points of contact or money, able to do that process on their own, but they are still receiving a large volume of these migrants who make it across and trying to take care of them here in downtown San Diego. I'm going to send it over to the live center with 10 News reporter Jared Ahrens. Jared?
As all this plays out down in Calexico and El Centro, we're reminded right now of the human toll of this crisis at our border. Just hours ago, the autopsies were released for the 2 young children who died while in U.S. custody at the border, and the autopsies show they were caused by bacterial infections. One of them, this boy, an 8-year-old, died in a hospital in Mexico on Christmas Day. Remember, in the past, President Trump had blamed the children's family for bringing them. Now the autopsies show it was a bacterial infection. Kind of underscores some of the conditions that some of these people were forced to live in and deal with as they waited for asylum hearings and for processing when they tried to cross and seek refugee status. In the live center, Jared Ahrens, 10 News.
Jared, thank you.
All right, let's get out to 10 News reporter Brian Slonsky, who is by the outlet mall in Calexico. Brian, you're surrounded by people who've been waiting for quite some time for the president's motorcade.
Yeah, Virginia, it's wild over here. I want to show you exactly what's going on in front of the Grand Plaza outlets. So you see the people are all surrounding, but check out here to this side. I'm going to have Steve pan over. The Calexico police officers have the street blocked right now. You see they have the body armor on, they've got the long guns out, and then there's a couple canine units also to the side of the street. They've got some people coming over every so often telling this big group of people here lining the street to get back. This is 2nd Street, so they're trying to keep everybody out of the road. And then you see that big, what looks like a Bearcat vehicle kind of right in the middle of the street. Some sheriff's deputies on motorcycles, and then of course the police officers as well. So everyone waiting, hoping to catch a glimpse of the president if that motorcade does indeed come through here. So that area of the 2.25 mile fencing where you saw me standing about 10 or so minutes ago, that was on the other side of the mall. That was down that way, and then the protest and the support group where you saw Laura, that's right in the middle. So this is the other side, and it looks like if Steve pans way down to the end of the street, that may be the beginning of that presidential motorcade. So I doubt well, it looks like they may actually come right down the street. So all of those motorbikes are right in front, and then we'll wait to see if the presidential cars come behind them. So right now they are coming down the street. We're watching this live as we speak. Behind me right now, there's a lot of people in the road, so they're gonna, if the cars actually plan on coming through here, you can see they're waving people out. It's gonna be a big task to get everybody out of the street. Probably 200 to 300 people out here right now, and these appear to be people who are anti-Trump folks, which we are in the middle of right now. They're chanting "Lock him up." So this will not be a support group that he drives through this time like the one that he drove through last time with the warm welcome. This will be quite the opposite, at least the area on 2nd Street and Grand Plaza Circle where I am now. I'm going to leave Steve on this shot, but I'm going to tell you about something else that's going on behind me. On top of the Grand Plaza outlet malls, there are several law enforcement personnel up there with looks like heavy body armor and long guns as well, possibly a sniper unit or something like that, keeping watch on top of the roof. And then in the parking lot of the Grand Plaza outlets, there's a massive section that's blocked off right now, and it's just full of law enforcement vehicles only, probably a dozen or so of those. That's what Steve's walking over to show you right now. And then of course we're here on 2nd Street outside of the outlets, where there's all of the anti-Trump folks, tons of media people, and then of course all the law enforcement personnel as well. So we're waiting at this point to see if this is in fact the area that he comes through. The street completely blocked off, so if this is the area, you see the Bearcat there with the looks like the dish type thing on the top of it. If Steve can pan over to that followed the motorcade earlier when we were in El Centro, when he was leaving the Naval Air Station. And all of those motorbikes that just took off, they led the way as well, kind of surrounding the cars on both sides. The motorcade was going very slow, and the bikes were zooming by, if you remember from that shot earlier. So they're taking off again, and here we are waiting to see if this is indeed the route he's going to take. This would be, of course, the other side from where his plaque is, the plaque on that new fencing on the other side of the outlets. Virginia and Jim?
That's what we wanted to get clear with you, Brian, is this the route you would have to take or would likely take if you wanted to get to where that plaque is mounted?
So if you were to try to get to that plaque where we are, or where we were standing earlier, you would have to go on the other side of the mall. So this particular street, you see here is 2nd Street. You would take this basically straight into the mall parking lot. You almost weave through the mall parking lot. That's how we took to get there. Go down a dirt road, and then you end up at the plaque. And on the other side of the plaque is the road that leads through the port of entry. So we're, I guess you'd say maybe a mile from that area. And Laura Acevedo with the group of pro-Trump folks and the protesters are right in the middle of all that. So the plaque's on the far side, the protesters in the middle, and we're here now, have moved to the other side because of the massive law enforcement presence here the west side, I believe this is the area that we'd believe that possibly they would be coming through. So a lot of action happening over here, but actually in two, it looks like another helicopter is coming through here right now. I can't make out exactly what kind it is, but it might be another one of those air support that flies through just to check the area, just like the ones that were flying around the base earlier, and kind of like the one we saw earlier. So we'll keep our eyes on this one too.
Yeah, Brian,
Jim in Virginia.
actually we are now looking at video of President Trump, and it looks like he is meeting with Border Patrol agents and other law enforcement, and he may be right by that section of the revamped border fence. So that would mean that his motorcade did not, in fact, go by that group that was waiting by the outlet mall where there was heavy police presence that seemed to actually block the road off, which would have made it difficult for the motorcade
It's
to
very
go
interesting.
through.
You wonder about the logistics here and whether they're even doing anything to maybe create a little bit of a distraction. And Ron, feel free to weigh in on this from your knowledge point.
Right. Well, I think they had several spots they could have gone.
Oh, let's listen to what President Trump is saying.
Unfortunately, a protector that I guess you need, because you don't know who's on the other side of the border. I hope it works. This is just a concrete protector, but the wall behind it, and you see it all the way down, and we're going to be building, we've already built a lot of it. It looks great. It's better and much more effective than the previous wall, and we actually can do it faster, and it's less expensive, if you can believe it. So it's better, faster, and less expensive. Other than that, who knows? Thank you all for being here. It's a great stretch of wall. See where it's going? And this is going all the way up. And much of it is like this. We have different walls. We have some that is holding back water, so obviously this doesn't do that trick. But we have a lot of big concrete divisions that hold back various parcels of water. We have a lot of water going up. But this is, I would say, the majority would be in this style. And some of it's 30 feet, some of it's 15 feet, some of it's 12 feet, depending on the area. Much of it's reinforced heavily and very, very hard to climb. If you want to climb that, it's pretty sharp up on top too. If you want to climb that, you deserve whatever you can get. But it's a very, very hard. It's meant anti-climb. It's called anti-climb. So it's a great wall, and it looks, I think it looks fantastic. Very see-through, so you're able to see the other side, which is a very important element. Okay?
Mr. President, do you have any response to lawsuits from filed by California and other states?
No. You know, it's interesting about California. They're begging me for the wall in San Diego. You know that, because the people were pouring through in San Diego, going over the front lawns, going into people's houses. So they want the wall done in San Diego. And we did it, and then you hear they don't want the wall. They want the wall. If you ever took it down, they wanted that one so badly, and we did it. We did a great job. We stopped everybody, actually everybody from coming over. It was a tremendous success, but California is always the first one to complain. And I don't mean the people of California, they're fantastic. I'm talking about the politicians in California. They complain. When their forests go up, they complain. They gotta take care of their forests a lot better. But when they want the wall in San Diego, but then they're always the first one. So they were the first one to pull the National Guard, and they need the National Guard, especially in California. So we're very proud of this. As you know, this area is an area that a lot of people used to come through, and since we've had it up, Kevin, I think not one person's been able to get through. These people can speak to it better. Come on over here. You guys are my friends. Come on over here. Say hello to the fake news, fellas. Fake news.
Some of us are okay. Mr. President, this morning when you spoke at your ICE nominee,
Yeah. No, we're going to see what happens. We want to have people. We want to have everything just perfecto. We'll see what happens. But we may be going in a different. You'll be seeing very soon. We may be going in a different direction. If anybody wants to speak up about this, so we just got this up, and I'd like you to, Gloria, if you would, Gloria, maybe you'll say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, as the chief here in El Centro, we're very appreciative of this wall. These men and women out here in this area of 2 miles were experiencing a high number of assaults and use of force incidents. This was prior to this wall being built. This is a 30-foot border wall that are pillar bollards, and you can see through it. For us, it's a huge advantage to see what's on the other side, because before, with the old landing mat, we could not see the adversary. We couldn't see the threat that was on that side. We would get rocked constantly. We would get items thrown at us every day. With this 30-foot wall, we haven't had those type of incidents. Just here in these 2 miles, our assaults have dropped by 65% just in this area. That's very important to me as a chief because I don't want our agents hurt. I want them out here protecting the country and doing their job. In these 2 miles, just illegal entries alone have dropped by 75% just in this area. Yes, the wall is here and people have, and maybe around it are breaching the area. They're coming around.
The only way, by the way, and the only way they get in is by going around it. They're not going over it because you have a lot of tremendous people watching. They can't get the ladders and go over it. Plus, it's very dangerous. It's very high to go over it. So when Gloria says 65%, this is 100%. But when they go down further, but we're going further and further out. Every day we're building more wall. And we're going further and further, and you'll be at 99.9, I predict.
Well, we will, and we have about 11 miles, Mr. President, thank you for that, construction starts with this type of wall in June of this year.
Good, it's going this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
It will be.
Sir, we have some of our sheriffs here.
Good,
our
please.
fabulous partners. Sheriffs,
come on over here. Central casting, you can't cast it. What do you have? You don't have anybody in Hollywood that looks like these guys.
I'm a sheriff from the Central Valley of California, and I have 3 other Central Valley sheriffs. We feel this impact from 400 miles away. Each of us have experienced heinous crimes that are committed by people in our country illegally. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank this president for doing the right thing and standing up for law enforcement in this country. It is greatly appreciated, and I just want you to know that.
We're with you.
Hi,
Congressman.
Congressman.
How are you? He got a good one.
How are you?
He got a good one.
I'm Sheriff Donnie Youngblood, Kern County.
There's a great group of people.
Good seeing you.
Sheriff, say something if you'd like.
So
please.
we don't have on the south end of our county, Pinal County, Arizona. We border here with Pima County, and together we're constantly working to try to fight the drug trafficking and the human trafficking that's coming into this country. A couple weeks ago, I was in the Oval Office, and we issued a challenge for congressmen and women and senators to come down here and see the border. I appreciate our president leading by example and coming down here. You can see the benefits of the wall, and hopefully as we progress with this, we'll start to see those effects in our county as well, because we're fighting this every day, the human trafficking and the drug trafficking. And I know Sheriff Napier out of Pima County can talk a little bit more about that.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Mark Napier. I'm the Sheriff of Pima County, Arizona. I am the largest border county in the United States. The strategic deployment of physical barriers along our southern border will always be part of the picture of border security, which is absolutely fundamentally necessary for humanitarian reasons, public safety reasons, and also for national security reasons. Anyone who would suggest that we do not have a crisis on our southern border is being intellectually dishonest to the point of being dishonest with malice. We have a humanitarian crisis which is very clear and compelling. We have a compelling crisis of public safety with human trafficking, drug trafficking, sex trafficking coming up through the border. This is not make-believe. This is something that we live with every day as border sheriffs. So we applaud the efforts of the current administration to secure our border. It's long overdue. And those who would argue that we do not have a crisis on our southern border need to come to my part of the world and see what's really going on. We interdicted 58 pounds of methamphetamine just the other day, and last month 13,000 fentanyl pills. My deputies recover about 100 bodies a year in the deserts of Pima County, Arizona. So please do not tell me this is not a public safety crisis, not a humanitarian crisis, and not a national security concern. So this is a very serious issue, and it's time our government got serious about it. Thank you.
And they don't come here. The people that are opposed, mostly Democrats. I mean, Republicans are for it, but mostly Democrats. They don't come here. And we want them. Yeah, we want them to come here. We could take you to sections. Now it looks nice and calm because we have the wall. But if you would have seen this before we put the wall up, you wouldn't have believed it. But we could take you to sections that are so dangerous that you can't walk through them. Okay? You can't walk through them. So, thank you very much, all of you.
We also have
Please.
Chief Flores here to
Come on, Chief.
talk about the port of entry and field
Please say a few words, please.
Good afternoon, Pete Flores. I'm the Director for Field Operations for the San Diego Field Office. My AOR consists of all the California and Mexico ports of entry along with the airport, seaport in San Diego. I can tell you from our perspective, as we talk comprehensive border security, when border security means national security, at our ports of entry, where we have, last year we did 79.3 million travelers come through our port of entry. We also did $50 billion worth of trade that came through our ports of entry just northbound. On what we see down here. So then additional investment in officers, additional investment in technology, NII equipment, our x-ray equipment, and what we have, our ability to scan, screen, and inspect is a tremendous investment in how we do business on the border and securing our border, as well as allowing for the facilitation of legitimate trade and travel. Well, thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Fantastic job.
I'm Jenny Day with the local media here in Calexico. We have been covering this now for
Good.
months.
Thank you.
I'm just curious though, so many of these migrants are crossing illegally. So how would shutting down the southern border help if they're crossing illegally and not through?
Well, we're going to shut it down if we have to, but Mexico can do it very easily. And they've been, as you know, Jenny, they've been doing a very good job over the last 4 days. I will tell you, we're going to shut it down if we have to. We're going to tariff the cars coming in that they make in Mexico if we have to. But Mexico's been doing a great job. I want to thank the president of Mexico. He's the first one. He's really been doing the job. He's helping Mexico too. Not only economically and not only because I won't be forced to shut it down or do the tariffs, but he really is helping Mexico. He's doing a great thing for his country. So I want to thank, through your camera, I want to thank him, the president of Mexico. Thank you. Anybody?
If we could ask, we've seen the letter that your lawyers have sent about your tax returns. Is there anything you'd like to say about it?
Nothing whatsoever. Nothing whatsoever. I have nothing to say about it. It's I got elected. They elected me. Now they keep going. I'm under audit. When you're under audit, you don't do it. But I'm under audit. Other people are under audit, and nobody would do it when you are going through an audit. And I always go through audits. They audit me all the time. I don't know if they audit you, Sheriff. I don't know. Do they audit you people? I don't think these people ever get audited. They'd be afraid to audit you people. But, so that's it. Any other question?
Attorney General Barr before his testimony. Can you talk to him at all about
I don't know, but I think he's doing a fantastic job. I think he's a fantastic Attorney General. He is so respected in the Department of Justice and by these people. It's what we need. He's a great gentleman. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you back at the next stop. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Go ahead. Do a good job.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. You got to move quickly.
I have San Diego reporting, so.
Yeah, so
interesting
obviously
to see
the president alluding to security concerns as to, well, we lost the picture there, as to why he ended up at that section. So you saw the concrete wall, which is just part of the facility there around the parking lot. And on the other side, you saw the wall, the newly revamped section of about 2.25 mile stretch. That's the wall that everyone's talking about, the fence there you can see through. Earlier, we had reporters, Brian Schlonsky, as well as Laura Acevedo, who were right next to it. Clearly, they didn't want to put the president there for security concerns.
I think we all assumed he was going to go to where the plaque had been put in place, that he would want to see that, perhaps get a photo op with it. But you're right, once we got the sense, oh, this is where they're doing it. And did you sense, at the beginning, the president to me didn't seem entirely comfortable. You see him look back and he said, I hope this holds out, or something to that effect.
Then you can't really see, on the other side. But so there you have it. So that's why we never saw the motorcade going by the section where Brian Schlonsky is, because they obviously bypassed that. And presumably now they're going to get in the motorcade and head back to Naval Air Facility, El Centro. That's where Kim Hunt is right now. Kimberly's been staking that place out. There are a lot of people gathering there because they can't wait to see the president as the motorcade starts to come towards you, Kim.
The crowd is growing here, and there is excitement in the air. Among them, this beautiful family behind me, Brent and Carly Ashurst. And Carly, just what is your message to the president?
We just thank him for coming and checking the border for himself, and just seeing what is going on here firsthand, what happens in our community and how it affects it. And we just thank him for coming and taking the time.
And Brent, clearly the border wall, this issue of immigration is the reason for his visit. What are your feelings?
I think there is a lot of rhetoric, and he is meeting with the people that are going to give him the information he needs. So I think he's a smart guy. He's sitting down with all the people that are on the front line, the men and women of the Border Patrol, and he's obviously taking longer than he was supposed to right now because I'm guessing he's getting information from these people, and they're going to tell him what they need, the resources to do their job properly.
Were you here to be able to see Air Force One come in?
We were, and watching that plane land, I felt like, at least the group that we were with, it's almost like you were overwhelmed with patriotism just watching that huge jumbo jet land. And not to mention, I mean, it is in our backyard. It's not very often. I know in my lifetime I've never seen Air Force One, so seeing it fly in here was pretty spectacular, and it seemed like everyone around us was pretty overwhelmed by just its presence.
It's nice you made it a family issue, and you kids have just been fantastic out here. You're just all so adorable. It's unbelievable. But you've got them young, and my compliments to your children.
Thank you. Yes, we teach them to pray for who is ever in charge of our country and any other elected official, no matter what the party is.
Well, we appreciate you took a couple of minutes because we know the motorcade's not far from coming back by. This is Bennett Road right here, right in front of the air base here in El Centro. And more people are gathering, parking along the street, both right here where we are just outside the base and along down as far as we can see down Bennett Road. Back to you, Virginia. Jim?
All right. Hopefully he'll get there soon. Thank you, Kimberly.
And we have seen primarily reporters, or I should say supporters, around the president, and I don't think we've seen any negative.
Well, actually, where Brian was when there was a heavy
we have.
police
No,
presence,
we've
there
seen
were
that
some.
protest taking place,
Yeah.
but we haven't seen the president in the proximity of those protests. Let's bring Ron B. back into the discussion.
Yeah, Secret Service wouldn't want him to go anywhere near it because you can't control a crowd. And so they had a fake left, go right policy, I'm sure, from the get-go, and put him in a place that's going to be safe, and there were going to be agents on the other side of the border making sure it was safe there as well.
When we saw all those motorcycles coming down the street there toward the area where the protesters were, what was that, just a diversion?
Yeah, it was a diversion, and they figured that, well, there must be all these guys here, so this is probably the right spot. But how many other guys were everywhere else?
Mm-hmm. And that's not unusual. In fact, we've even seen motorcades where they have decoy vehicles where you're not even quite sure which vehicle the president is in.
It's very common, and this is out in a relatively rural area, not in a city, which is a lot more complicated.
So we have heard primarily, I mean, in totality really, from the side that supports the president's position on the border wall. What we've heard from so many people, I would think, you know, even this might be tough to orchestrate everybody on the same exact page. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, there's a problem. There's a problem at the border. And one of the ways that you can talk about that is have those at the border talk about it, not you. Because if folks are not believing you, then what about the people that are on the front lines? And I think that was a strategy, and I think it was a very effective strategy.
And how do you think it went off? I mean, how did you
I think
receive
it went
this?
fine. There are going to be lots of good optics for the president. For those that disagree with him, they will say it was just another dog and pony show.
It was a little humorous when the president, I mean, he was cruising along and there was really no friction with the media. It was all a one-sided message. And then when he introduced one of the members there of the Border Patrol, he said, here, come on, talk to the fake news.
Right. Well, that's, I think, the strategy revealed, basically, that are you going to hold them to the same standard as you hold me? These are the guys working for you. So I think that's an interesting strategy, which I think will appeal to his base and to his next meeting, the funders he will meet in Los Angeles and Las Vegas.
Yeah, raising money for the 2020 election. So what happens now, do you think? What needs to happen next? Where do we go from here in terms of the serious question about the border, immigration, and all of that?
Yeah, well, it's not going to be easy. It hasn't been easy to this point. Nothing is going to get settled until after the election. Nothing will be settled because everything's going to be used as a political football to kick over the Mexican side and back to this side until the election is settled, and then folks will be able to say, all right, can we get back to work now? But I think we're now too close to the election for anything meaningful to come through Congress in terms of fixing this problem. The president has made clear he wants to build a wall. He's building it one way or the other, and Congress has made it clear they don't want to provide him the funds for it. So welcome to our world today.
Well, it's a perfect launch for where we want to go right now as we talk about this ongoing debate and the controversy surrounding the border.
Yeah.
There is a shot that we want to bring you right now. Is this an area, and the producers maybe can help fill us in, where we have...
Looks like we have the shots of both. So on the left, you're looking at Trump supporters who are waiting for the motorcade. This appears to be the line of cars there that are waiting for the president's motorcade to arrive at Naval Air Facility El Centro. We see people wearing Make America Great Again hats and bringing their children there. And a lot of them thrilled just to see Air Force One. On the right, what we were showing you was, again, that outlet mall in, well, now it's on the left, the outlet mall in Calexico. And that's a familiar sight at these protests, and that's that big blow-up balloon of
the Trump
the baby Trump. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's in order to make the president not feel welcome. At least that's what they told 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo, that was the whole point. It looks like they're trying to bring the Trump baby down.
Yeah, perhaps to deflate the Trump baby. Yeah, their argument being that they feel like the president's acting like a baby, and they want to demonstrate that with this balloon that they bring to various rallies. And this balloon turns up at rallies all around the world.
It really does. Yeah. And there, look, stark contrast, right? So you've got the balloon there on the left, you've got Trump 2020 banner there on the right, and both groups there today.
What I thought we would see, and that we really haven't, would be a dispute where the two sides kind of face off like across the street from each other. We did see a few protesters near those that were supporting the president, but they appeared to be in small numbers and very quiet.
I mean, that's great too, right? Because in the U.S. you want to be able to express your opinion, but do it peacefully, and your message gets across better, actually. So let's get to 10 News anchor Brian Schlonsky, who has been monitoring that area where there was a heavy police presence. And Brian, so we found out that yes, heavy police presence, but that's not because the president's motorcade was going to go by there.
That's exactly right, Jim and Virginia. That's because the president and his motorcade were likely all the way down there at the very end of the 2.25-mile stretch, and they were making sure that nobody else got through here, and that's the reason for this big police presence here. One thing we noticed, though, while we were sitting here watching, there are officers here from several different units. There's Calexico, there's Brawley, there's also El Centro here as well. So you can see now they have relaxed mightily. And remember that massive crowd around me? Yeah, they figured it out too, that the president and his motorcade not coming through here because everybody is flooding out, heading to the other side of the mall, which is also blocked off. So when we were coming down here, when we left the area closer to where Kim is, closer to the naval base, we were trying to get as close to the wall as we could, to the barrier, and we got blocked down here on a street. A border patrol turned us around, said no media, no one going through, and we believe that's most likely the route that he took to get over there. And just before you took me, there was another one of those air combat patrol choppers flying on the other side here. Kind of an interesting story, though. One of the people who was out here hoping to catch a glimpse of the president told me that he was on the phone with his mother, who was shopping at Walmart. She walks out of Walmart, which is on the other side here, a couple blocks away from the mall, and the motorcade went right on by. So an area that people probably didn't expect to see it, and come out from shopping at Walmart, and there goes the president, guys.
Yeah, all those people waiting all that time, and a little luck, hey, sometimes it works that way. Hey, Brian, I want to ask you, because we haven't seen... Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, this might be what you were getting ready to ask me, because this was the area where a lot of counter-protesters were hoping to see the motorcade, and of course they didn't see it, but I'm not sure if that's what you were going to ask or not, Jim.
I was actually going to ask, have you seen any direct effort by the authorities out there to keep those that might be at conflict on each side of this debate away from each other?
I have not seen that. Now, Laura seemed to be in an area where they were definitely closer together, but when this was all going on, when the officers started showing up and they could tell that there was some commotion, possibly the motorcade, it was just kind of a mad mix of everyone. There were people on the loudspeakers who look, they've already collected up the speakers, but they were yelling and definitely some anti-presidential rhetoric there. But then there was a lot of people who were standing right next to them. It seemed like everybody's main priority wasn't to yell over the person next to them. It was to get out their camera phone in case that was the moment the motorcade came by. But of course, that moment here at least never came.
Sure, and try to collect a little piece of history there. Brian, thank you very much.
And Brian mentioned Laura, so let's go to 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo, and we can see from your shot, Laura, that there's a big Trump baby balloon behind you. It looks like they're deflating it.
Yeah,
Baby Trump, what the protesters call it, is actually being deflated as we speak. They are getting ready to go. As it may seem, it doesn't seem like the president saw Baby Trump this time, because they did not come by where our shot was. We did have some protesters, and they are still actually out here. They are talking to each other for right now, saying...
Sounds
having
like
a little bit of
interference or
audio
something.
problem, but you get the idea. Things are starting to wind down. People have been waiting for hours, both at the beginning of the visit. Now the visit is starting to wind down because we are expecting the president to arrive at Naval Air Facility El Centro soon.
Right, and want to mention Ron B, of course, has been helping us throughout the afternoon. Follow the events, the overall theme. Obviously, everybody on the same page. Your overall impressions of what took place?
Well, I think this was first and foremost political optics for the president, so that he could show that the people at the border believe in what he's doing and that it's working. And this was also a way to show his base, to show his supporters that he will raise money from tonight and tomorrow in Las Vegas, that he's following the 97% of conservatives that support building a wall. I think it was all about that. Now, if you disagree with the president, this will be just another dog and pony show.
And you talked about optics. In fact, the president on his official account already popping up videos from this trip. So we saw the video of the motorcade going by supporters, waving flags.
Go to 60 million followers on Twitter.
Already the video up from the roundtable with all of the people helping him.
I would call that a meeting with the troops, basically.
Yeah.
Everybody seemed to agree pretty much on what they were doing. It was very well orchestrated.
Were you surprised at all? I know the Border Patrol certainly sees the problem and the crisis, the words they use that are taking place at the border, but they also see the human element. They can't avoid it.
Of course
I didn't hear that, though, mentioned at all in any of the speeches that were made about
there
what
were
we
a
need
couple
at the
that mentioned
wall.
that there's a humanitarian crisis and that we have people being diverted in order to feed the people.
But it was a humanitarian crisis that they blamed on the lack of enforcement at the wall, that because we're porous, that's encouraging this to happen.
Yes, I understand that. And you have to look at it from their perspective. They're juggling legitimate families coming across, illegitimate families coming across, drugs coming across, and so they have to be on their guard every day of the week. Everything that they said has been consistent from my point of view for the last 2 years from the Border Patrol in our region.
Kimberly Hunt is at the Naval Air Facility. Kim, are you seeing some activity there?
Yes, absolutely, Virginia. There's lots of activities, and cars are now streaming onto the base. Clearly, people know that the president's motorcade will come right up this road. In fact, there is some kind of vehicle that's up there with its lights on, clearing Bennett Road right now. And we see lights coming toward us, but lights being on doesn't mean anything particularly at this point. We can't see what vehicles they are, but President Trump's motorcade will be back here at Naval Air Station El Centro very soon to take off. His calendar had him at 3:15 headed toward LA. He toured, as you know, the new border there, the segment of the border in Calexico, an $18 million project. He funded it, started it under his presidency in 2015. They completed it in September of 2018, and he's just come from a roundtable of local law enforcement laying out the issues that they see in this border region of San Diego with the number of migrant families that are streaming across the border in the caravans, and the record number of apprehensions that we've seen. Set a record for our decade in February, another record in March, 100,000 apprehensions just here in our area. But we have Air Force One on the tarmac, and it's waiting for the president. And he has been talking about this situation while he's been in San Diego, talking about what is very important to him, border security, talking about the drug situation. We know it to be an estimated $200 to $700 billion industry. the drug trade. And so San Isidro, obviously a very important, the most busiest, the largest land entry point that we have in the Western Hemisphere. And so any talk recently of shutting that down would cripple the economy in the area, and 100,000 people or cars stream through San Isidro every day. So there was a lot on the plate and a lot at stake for the people in this area. But right now, you can see behind me, we've got some farmers and business owners with the sign Trump 2020. Lots of families. There we talked already with the Amherst family, and so they're waiting for the president, and they say they want to show their support. Virginia?
All right, Kimberly, we will be checking back with you when the motorcade starts to come, but as you said, it looks like they're prepping for the president's car to get there.
And want to check back with Brian Schlonsky, who's standing by with Representative Juan Vargas. Brian, take it away.
Well, Jim and Virginia not standing by with him anymore, but he came out here, was meeting with a lot of the folks who were gathered who had messages for President Trump, and obviously the president and his motorcade never crossed through here, through 2nd Street by the Outlet Mall, so they did get, I guess, a consolation prize, if you will. They get to meet with the congressman, so they took off just a couple minutes ago and headed off that way. As you can see, so did everybody else. The street is now back open, just reopened, so cars coming through. Some of the people who were parked inside the Outlet Mall are now able to leave, and all the law enforcement presence has left as well. So when we jump off here, we'll see if we can track down the congressman to get his thoughts on the day, but we did see him meeting with a fairly large contingent of people who definitely had a message that they wanted to deliver to him.
All right, Brian, sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Now to 10 News reporter Laura Acevedo. Laura, I want to ask you, so what sense are you getting from all the people who waited there for so long today?
Well, Virginia, I can tell you that they're very frustrated. As you were tossing to me, people were asking me, where's the president? Do you know where the president is? And so I was telling them he's already left. So frustration, a lot of people here. We have been seeing some people kind of confronting each other, going back and forth, discussing their opinions. We have heard some yelling at some point, but for the most part, they have been doing just that, discussing. But again, people very frustrated here. Moments ago, we did see the Border Patrol Sector Chief for El Centro, Gloria Chavez, drive by here. You can see some of that Homeland Security police making their way away from the scene where President Trump was. So again, the scene here, if I could describe it in one word, it would be frustration that he didn't come through this area.
All right, Laura, appreciate the update.
And want to get back to Ron B. And I know, Ron, your time is not unlimited. We appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'd go up against General Hospital with you guys any day of the week.
Exactly.
Wow, you're brave.
Only you tell us about your affairs now, Ron, and then we'll.
Yeah, really.
So, Calexico, Mexicali, areas of the world that don't get this kind of attention very often.
Correct.
A lot of people we've seen today just seem to be enamored with the whole idea of the attention and the fact that the president was going to be going by.
Yes, I think that's true. And it's a rural area, and I think the president knew that he would get that sort of support there. And I believe that he achieved his objective by creating presidential optics of getting something done at the border for his funders and his supporters. This will be looked upon as another political stunt by his opponents, but we are in a political season, and you guys will be covering it very, very well for the next few months.
When are we not in a political season?
I know, now it just never ends.
It never ends.
Do you anticipate that this will just heat up more, or to just be kind of the same constant drumbeat?
I think it'll be the same drumbeat. It's the same message that the president has had since the beginning. He's just bringing other people into it, those at the border who are giving their message for him on behalf of building more of a wall.
Ron B., expert in international politics, you have been awesome this afternoon.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me give it back to you so we can have a mutual adoration society.
Right, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you so much.
We'll have our own round table, right?
Yeah.
All right, that's right.
Yeah, we really benefited from your insights. Want to head on over now to Jared Aarons, who's in the 10 News Live Center, and you've got a interesting tweet there, Jared?
I do, guys. Representative Juan Vargas, who was out there, you mentioned, Brian Schlonsky mentioned that he was there talking to some of the protesters and sharing insights with them, but couldn't stop to talk to us. Well, he did put out a few tweets about 5 minutes ago criticizing President Trump. Said, "Don't be fooled. They're just here to spread lies and further their narrative." He continued to talk about not just the failed immigration policy, but also shining some light on pollution and sewer spills and toxins coming from the Tijuana River. So 5 tweets from Representative Juan Vargas, and as you guys can imagine, not any of them complimentary towards the president. We're checking to see if any of our other local leaders have spoken or tweeted or put out statements about the president's visit today. We'll bring those to you as soon as we find them. Guys, back to you.
All right. Appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, we want to get back out to Naval Air Facility El Centro. The president is definitely a bit behind schedule because he has spent longer than expected, I'm sure, by the White House talking to people and letting people speak as well. So, Kim, are any more activity of cars? Does it look like the motorcade's coming soon?
I don't see it yet, but the people are coming. More and more people are gathering in this area, and we have a good shot right down Bennett Road. It's hard to tell because a lot of the cars are putting their lights on, and it's a sunny day. There's absolutely no weather road reason why they need to do it, but it's not the motorcade. This will be a white truck. But a lot of these people here are very excited, and it's interesting to see the cross section. In fact, one of the signs is a farming sign, and it's Trump 2020. And it's interesting as we think about, there was a lot of talk last week. Of course, the president backed off of totally shutting the border and said that he's going to give Mexico a year. And if they don't do it, he's going to turn to tariffs, but still keep the possibility of shutting the border in his pocket. But there are farmers out here in support of President Trump. When we think about closing the border, of course, 40% of all of our fruits and vegetables that come into the U.S. come in from Mexico. And it is just a huge $1.7 billion area of commerce for this area. So it would have been just an economic debacle by the estimation clearly of our local politicians as well as the Regional Chamber of Commerce for us and this border. But there are farmers out here, and they are Trump supporters, and they feel that he has looked out for them and he's looking out for America, is the words that they were saying to us. And we'll get up there in a couple of minutes and talk to some of those people. Air Force One is on the tarmac. And another thing, as you heard a few minutes ago, the people here just feel not only is it an opportunity to see a sitting president, but also just the very sight of Air Force One landing. It really is awe-inspiring when Air Force One comes in and lands. And many of them were here for that, and they want to see it take off into the skies and head north for LA. But sitting on the tarmac right now, she's a beauty, Virginia.
And Kim, as you mentioned that, as we have you here, we do want, and we're of course waiting for the president to arrive to take off, and we do want to see that. But let's kind of recap a little bit. By my watch, it's been approximately 3 hours since Air Force One touched down and the president deplaned. You were there for it. How did that go this morning, now 3 hours ago?
It went off like clockwork. Everyone was in place. Everyone had to wait that was on the tarmac. The special group of people that for whatever reason they had a connection and they got the clearance to get on base. They had to wait for a couple of hours inside the building. We waited for a while as well. And you're checked and double checked. You're checked, your bags are checked separately. You're taken off buses, your bags are checked, then you're brought back on, then you're brought through another gate, then you're told to get off again. It was a process, and a process for everyone, but everyone was in place. As we all know, the president was a little late arriving here, but they made up a little time as well. And he seemed to love to talk to the people, and a couple of the young men that we spoke to that got a hat signed and was able to say hello to the president. One said Trump 2020, and he said President Trump looked at him and said, yeah, we'll make America great again. So we had very short conversations with a lot of the people. He loved one woman's hat, and so had quite a lengthy, considering the crowd he was trying to speak to, conversation with her about her hat. People were thrilled. They were kind of clamoring over each other to get a chance to just either hand him the hat or to say hello to him or see if he would talk back with them. He did that and then was immediately put into his SUV, and the number of SUVs, the Secret Service, the local law enforcement, Border Patrol, it was an amazing sight to see them take off toward Calexico. And any minute now, they'll be coming back here, Jim and Virginia.
And Kimberly, we will be checking back with you. And thanks for pointing out, you're right, there are so many small moments with any sitting president that will not be forgotten for their entire lives by the people that were able to share them today. So we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, it's as much about the office of the presidency, whatever your politics are. You know what? We have County Supervisor Diane Jacob joining us by phone. Give us some of her thoughts on what's happening today. Diane Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. I just want to ask, did you have a chance to hear some of the things being said and your take on it?
I did. First, let me say that I represent 45 miles out of the 60 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego County, so these issues are not new to me. And as a result of that, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors years ago are on record requesting, calling on the federal government to secure the border and to stop the illegal traffic coming across. And that means the drug smuggling and the human smuggling that's coming across. So this is not a new issue to us, and it's refreshing to see the attention finally that is getting paid to this issue. Secondly, San Diego County also has supported the lawsuit against the state of California on the state's sanctuary state policies. Now, having said that, we have a problem with the asylum seekers and with the asylum process. And these people are legally coming into our county, and even though we have a firm position against illegal immigration, these people are here legally. And since October of last year, more than 11,000 asylum seekers have been literally dumped on the streets of San Diego, and putting the county, the nonprofits, and everyone at risk in terms of potential health and safety issues. Fortunately, we've had a rapid response network that stepped up, Jewish Family Services, and the county has stepped up to catch as many of these people as we can. The county has spent, with health screenings and trying to prevent another health crisis, $1.3 million of our local money. And all we're asking the feds to do is reimburse us and change their policy. They had a safe release policy where the federal government took care of the asylum seekers. There was no problem with local government, and that was done before October of last year. So we have called on the federal government to return that safe release policy, for the feds to assume their responsibility in taking care of these asylum seekers and not dumping the cost or the people on the streets of San Diego. Unfortunately, we were in a position not getting any action of filing a lawsuit, and that's what we did the other day.
And Supervisor, considering that and the pending lawsuit, what are the odds, do you think, that you will get compensated for the costs that have been incurred by the county?
Well, stand by. Time will tell. I'm not going to speculate at this point, but it's our responsibility to call out this issue as well as all the other issues that I've outlined, and make sure that the federal government, the administration, and all those in Washington understand that the asylum process is not working. It's causing a huge impact, both health and safety issues, and the people and the costs are being dumped on local government, in this case, the county of San Diego. And the numbers are growing.
Overall, were you encouraged by what you saw today? You seem to have a positive attitude about what you saw.
I'm very encouraged. I mean, this issue of a porous border has been around for a long time, and fortunately, years ago, the National Guard came in, and with some scrap, they built a fence. That stopped people coming illegally across, driving across, but it has not stopped people from just coming right over that. So we need a new border fence, wall, whatever you want to call it. Our border needs to be secured, not just with a fence or a wall, but there's more Border Patrol agents that are needed, more manpower, woman power, whatever you want to call it, and also technology. We need technology. It takes resources to do it, but it's costing us a lot of money in both human loss and for the local government to pick up the tab on what we're seeing here in San Diego. And we've got crime. We've got drugs coming across our border. And anybody that doesn't think that we have a crisis, they don't know the border and the border issues.
So on the one hand, while you do support creating a physical barrier, securing the border, you heard what some of the Border Patrol agents and the chief had to say and what this administration is doing, but you're not happy with where they've come down on the safe release program.
Exactly. I mean, what the Board of Supervisors in San Diego County is doing is the right thing. We're not taking sides on who's right or who's wrong, but where we have seen there is a clear public health and safety issue, we have taken a stand. That's why we supported the administration's lawsuit against the state on the sanctuary state issue, because we think being a sanctuary state and being forced into that is wrong. But that's also why we're filing a lawsuit against the feds on the asylum seeker issue, because they're just dumping, now it's at least 11,000 and more coming onto the streets of San Diego, and we're having to absorb those costs, $1.3 million and growing. That's local money that we could be using to help veterans, to help seniors, and to help those who are here legally, U.S. citizens. But yet we're having to pick up those costs, and it's not fair.
Well, you talk about the numbers that are coming, and touching on that point, the president talked about it in his roundtable with the Border Patrol members, saying, look, we've simply, and I'm paraphrasing, we simply reached our limit. We can't take any more. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with that. If there's any way to stop any more coming across the border, I would certainly support that.
Where does our compassion, though, because when we see the images, especially of individuals, when you get into individual cases and you see the children, you see the mothers, where do we draw the line and say, okay, we can't help you anymore?
I have a lot of compassion, particularly for the children and the families and the plight that these individuals are having in their own countries. But U.S. citizens have to come first. And we need to make sure that we are keeping our county safe. And a lot of the people, even those asylum seekers who are coming across legally, they're bringing diseases across that could cause a lot of problem for our general population. That's why we've jumped in with our health department and with health screenings, vaccinations, to try to make sure that we don't have a health crisis. So we're at capacity. What I heard, the Border Patrol's at capacity, and there's only one way. It's like a person that is hemorrhaging. The first thing you have to do is stop the bleeding, and then we work on fixing the patient for the long term. Again, I have a lot of compassion for these folks coming across, but it's not fair to them, and a lot of them are suffering because the process is not working. Even the asylum process is not working, and there are way too many that are coming across, and I hear there's more coming across. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to those of us in this county.
Supervisor Diane Jacob, thank you very much for your time and your insight.
Thank you very much.
I want to let you know what you're looking at here. This is not a short time ago, and we're getting video of the motorcade as it starts to head back to Naval Air Facility El Centro. We're also looking here at earlier video from the roundtable discussion in which members of it, we had politicians there, assembly members and congressional representatives. We also had the chief of the section there for the Border Patrol. We had the commanding general for the Army Corps of Engineers, everybody talking about the concept of border security, about building a physical barrier and where things stand right now.
And we had a very consistent message that the Border Patrol is feeling, and ICE was there as well, and they had the same message. We are overwhelmed by the numbers that are showing up at the border, and it has to be stopped. It's not a matter of compassion at this point. It's a matter of we simply don't have the resources available to continue to take on the numbers.
And one of the other facets of this, of course, is the economy. You know, in terms of the binational economy, we had a chance to talk to San Diego Regional President CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Jerry Sanders, and he talked about how devastating closing the border would be, and also tariffs could have a chilling effect. And the president, though he has backed away from the concept of closing the border anytime soon, he has not completely taken it off the table as a possibility down the line if he doesn't feel Mexico is doing what they need to. Let's listen to what Jerry said.
But that really directly affects consumers. So if you add to the price of aluminum and steel and all that goes into building autos, that means they raise the price of autos. So consumers always pay for tariffs. While they may give some leverage in terms of negotiation, the end product, though, is a higher priced products that we take for granted.
And I thought Jerry Sanders made a good point about, yes, we do need to control the border. He said it's much tougher now for employers to hire undocumented immigrants and that the checks are much more stringent these days, and so that is getting under control. But he talked about how we are really tied economically in ways that many of us just don't comprehend at most every level. And when the president was threatening to shut down the border, that was affecting not just people that work across the border and cross the border every day, and there are thousands of those, but there are also family ties across the border where you have family members that were afraid to go visit a family member because they didn't want to get trapped on one side of the border or another. So it went beyond economics, and at the same time, it is just about all but economics.
Yeah, I mean, very human level, but also we're talking, I think he mentioned, $1.7 billion a day in cross-border trade. So I want to get back out to 10 News anchor Kimberly Hunt, standing by there outside Naval Air Facility El Centro. Hey, Kim.
Hi, Virginia. It's crowded out here right now, and right behind me we have members of the Farm Bureau, and they have their Trump 2020 sign. And what is your message? Why the support?
My support is for border security. Having been a victim of illegal crime for the last 3 weeks, I'm tired of it, and we need more security out here. I don't need people living someplace else in the country telling us how we have to live down here and what we should be careful of. It's bad. The crime is bad down here.
You were shaking your head when she said that.
Because it's absolutely correct. We need more legal immigration over here, not illegal.
And also over here, I heard you guys earlier, so you were talking about your support of Trump. Tell me about that.
I think it's great to support Trump. He knows how to keep America safe. I believe in a safe future for my children, and he should build that wall.
You wanted to add something?
Yes, the farmers of the Imperial Valley rely on the people that come from the border to work. We need legal immigration. Trump knows where our food comes from, and where Republicans are hardworking people that don't want handouts. We need to build the wall, get people here legally, and let's keep our country safe.
And one of the past presidents of the Farm Bureau is here. Come on in. Let's get your take on this, because you're with all of these people. And we talk about, especially with possibly shutting down the border, that 40% of our produce comes in from Mexico. And what are your thoughts as the Farm Bureau here?
Well, we also provide, in the middle of the winter, this valley provides the majority of the fruits and vegetables and crops that the nation eats, as we understand. So you got to remember, this side of the border produces the food for the country also. And security has always been thought of as food supply too. Then we always look for the government and the president to provide general security, defense. We don't do aircraft carriers, so we need the president and the government to do that for us first, then build a strong economy so we have customers to buy our products. And then third, he understands the Constitution by the way he's presented some of the judicial appointments. So we think that that's very important. And then lastly, it's nice that he's come to our small community to appreciate that we're here. And then I think you'll find not only the employers, but the employees in our community that's predominantly Hispanic appreciate President Trump also. You would see them out here today in force.
And there's a gentleman over here, you were telling us as we were talking here, all members of the Farm Bureau, but as we began to talk, he pointed over here to this field, step here by me, and you said, I own that field out there. And the person in it, how did you feel that?
Is one of our irrigators.
And your feelings?
He supports Trump. Many of the Hispanics here in Imperial Valley support Trump. For jobs, for them jobs, for me, is energy independence, border security. He's a business owner. He's tired of shipping our dollars overseas and keeping it here in the U.S. It's just like any business owner. You want to vertically integrate, and that's the same thing he's doing. By becoming energy independent, we're keeping our money here where it needs to stay.
And all of them waiting for the president, thank you for your time. And they're going to move their sign and make sure that they're facing the street because that motorcade is on its way. And we take one last look down Bennett Road. Don't see those headlights now, but a lot of people anxious for President Trump to enter Naval Air Station El Centro for the final leg of his afternoon here in Imperial Valley and representing all of San Diego County and our interests here in the southern region of the border, so impacted by immigration of all kinds, so impacted by what does come over the border. And these people here today have said that all of the topics that have been discussed recently, whether it's crime, drugs, illegal immigration, are top of mind for them. And they wanted to make sure that they gave their message to President Trump when he paid this visit. We see lights now, so we want to keep an eye now on Bennett Road because this motorcade is coming. Were you out here earlier when you were out here? So you saw when the Air Force One landed.
It was fabulous, and you can see it right back down there when it comes back out. Yeah, it was really wonderful, and it's put a chill through your body, or as Chris Matthews would say, up my leg. It was wonderful. A chill up my leg. It was wonderful.
Chill up my leg.
I know what he means.
And you're part of the group here, Kirk, on your and you've got on your shoulder. Yeah. Build the wall.
That's right.
Tell me about it.
Well, I've been raised in the valley for my whole life, 12 years, and I think it's gotten definitely a lot worse with like the immigrants coming in. We were traveling down the road one day and we saw 4 Hondurans running across the road, almost hit them. They're all dressed in black.
The same message that the other people have been saying here every night. You're saying, and people in this area coming in here to say that it has gotten worse as we see the lights coming up Bennett Road. And the President of the United States about to be wheels up out of Naval Air Station El Centro aboard Air Force One. We're going to keep that shot going down Bennett Road as this crowd finally gets to see the President of the United States come back by in the motorcade. Virginia, Jim, it's been a big day for these people out here.
Well, they are patient. Kim, they have been waiting quite a while. I know it's pretty windy out there, and you've got the kids there who you have to keep them occupied as they wait, but I'm sure they want to give them some sort of memory here and take some pictures to do something that a lot of people never get to do.
Absolutely. A lot of them saying they had never had the opportunity to be this close to the president, and they wanted to take that opportunity. In fact, a couple right here that I had spoken to just a few moments ago. You guys were here when the president arrived, and you're waiting for the motorcade, which is now just up the street. Your thoughts today?
I'm happy he's here. I hope he builds a wall.
And your wife is joining us too. A little earlier, you were saying that. And what is your feeling about the subjects of late and the president?
We think he's doing a great job, and we're glad he came to see the wall that's being built, and we hope he continues.
And here it is, the President of the United States' motorcade about to go by. Virginia, Jim?
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Kimberly.
thank you, Kimberly. Great job out there.
Absolutely. And for all the folks waiting, we want to thank you for joining us through all of this coverage and the team coverage that we've given you today with President Trump making his visit to the border. I want to let you know, by the way, General Hospital, if you're wondering what happened to it, it will air in its entirety here in the next 20 seconds as we're going to get off the air here.
Yeah, all the reporters, Brian, Laura, Kimberly, everybody that was out there. I mean, great
Ron
job
B,
today.
Jerry Sanders. I
Yep.
want to remind you, we have team coverage coming up here, starting with 10 News at 4, and we're going to have reaction locally here as well as everything else to wrap up this day for you. Thanks for joining us. You've been watching this special edition of 10 News.